Right, and we are going to be taking you through the next hour or so with my colleague Kartikeya here in tow in the run-up to this budget. 11 o'clock is when Kartikeya, the budget speech will be presented. We saw the visuals of Nirmala Sitharaman carrying that red color, document, the casing for the document. Kind of break away from tradition. Usually we see a suitcase in the hands of the finance minister. This is a red color document with the golden emblem of the Indian government.
But this is something which you can expect from at least from BJP in 2000, 2001. I remember, the whole protocol was to present the budget at 5 p.m. Vajpayee made it at 11 a.m. So these protocols have been changing over a over a period of time. But with this Prime Minister, you can expect the changes to be both dramatic and incremental.
And with this Finance Minister too, who seems to be very intent. There's been a lot of discussions in the lead up to this budget. She's been hearing views coming in from all across the board. Lots of expectations on her debut as a Finance Minister.
Krishna, because the Prime Minister has spoken about a 5 trillion economy, and 5 trillion economy is about aspiration. It is about India's place in the world. So, you increase the expectation of the public at large.
Oh, absolutely. And we here at WION World is going to be bringing you all the latest updates on this budget. It was just last night when the Finance Minister was giving final touches to the budget at the Finance Ministry building along with Minister of State for Finance Anurag Thakur, and she's left now the Finance Ministry building. Those were the latest visuals. Big focus on the budget will be to boost domestic consumption and address the rural crisis. The government could propose measures to boost consumer demand and ease rural stress to support the economy. While presenting the budget, Nirmala Sitharaman may also announce the government's intent on introducing a new direct tax code, DTC, an idea that has been pending for 9 years. Another thing to closely watch out for will be announcements regarding the non-banking financial companies, NBFCs, also known as the shadow banking sector. Just last year, the government had taken control of its financial services after defaults triggered fears that it might collapse. The Finance Ministry may also focus on steps to boost employment and exports. It may consider fiscal incentives like interest rate subvention and lower tax rates. But what will the Finance Minister do will only be clear at 11 a.m. Kartikeya. We have a very special set of guests joining us on the broadcast this morning. We have Mr. Jagdish Khattar, former Managing Director of Maruti Udyog, joining us in our studios here in Delhi. We also have Ms. Joyita Bhattacharya, Senior Fellow ORF. We also have Mr. Ashok Jha, former Finance Secretary. We also have Mr. Gautam Chikarmane, Vice President ORF, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you so much for taking time out. It's a special day, big day, Modi 2.0 government, Kartikeya. And what's the first thing that you would want to ask our set of panels?
My first question to our eminent panelists is, what are the expectations from the budget? Where would they want the Prime Minister to focus on in this budget?
If I were to go by, there's one wish from this budget from all of you, what would it be? Let's begin with you.
Well, I think the first thing to look at would be what is actually ailing the economy at the moment.
Okay.
Now, what is ailing the economy? You've got a very low GDP growth in the last few years, especially last year.
Yeah.
We have a problem of investment.
Yeah.
Private investment is almost dried up. We have high unemployment. The rates are again amongst the highest in the last, about 4 decades or so. We have agrarian distress. That's another issue.
All right.
So therefore, quite obviously, if the budget is going to be meaningful, it has to address these issues in a competent, cohesive manner.
All right. We have information now and visuals on the screens, ladies and gentlemen. That's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman reaching the Parliament with the budget document in her hand. Along with her is Minister of State for Finance Anurag Thakur. That's the latest update. Visuals coming in. This is from a short while ago from the Ministry of Finance building.
Bit of a formality. There will be a cabinet, Krishna, and once the cabinet has cleared the budget, then the ministers, the whole Treasury bench, they'll go to the Parliament. So the cabinet is going to take place in Parliament to just formally pass the budget.
That's the perspective of Kartikeya, procedure of how it's done. Even as protocols are being broken, certain procedures will still have to be followed.
Absolutely.
As far as the Parliament is concerned, we have also Mr. Deven Narang, country head, India, Syndicatum Biomass, joining us from India's capital, New Delhi. Mr. Deven Narang, thank you so much for being with us. Quick thoughts. We are less than an hour away from the budget. Your top pick as to what do you think this budget needs to do?
I do expect the corporate tax should be lowered and government should do away with dividend distribution tax because the Indian industry has to grow. we cannot only rely on domestic equity or debt. We need to get overseas equity and debt, which is ready to come into India. And if you especially look at my renewable energy sector, to achieve the targets of 175 megawatts, we need $55 billion in debt and equity. And this will come in when the investor sees a clear path to get a fair return on his investment back in whatever currency, back into his home country. And this would also boost employment, because if industry gets this kind of capital and debt, they will certainly expand, and that would be available at better favorable rates.
So, yesterday when the economic survey came, it spoke about creative destruction. Now, if we go through the data, the public sector consumes 8% of the Indian GDP. In the 1990s, China fired 25 million public sector employees, So, is that a possibility when it comes to India, when we talk about creative destruction and where we want to take away that 8, 7, 6% which is cornered by public sector enterprises in this country?
Well, I think government should seriously speed up the disinvestment process of the assets they hold, which will give them a lot of good dividends in terms of equity and debt. About hiring and firing, I have no comments to make. But I think certainly we should look at where we've lost jobs, especially in the garment export sector, which have moved to other ASEAN countries. So we can have a policy where this sector can be revived. I think we can employ 50 to 70 million people. Because SME sector, I think we need to think differently and we need to innovate and think out of the box.
Right, innovate and think out of the box is the word coming in from Devan Naran, country head of Syndicatum Biomass. Let's get back to our panel of guests over here. Mr. Jagdish Khattar, let me quickly ask you, this is the eternal dilemma, isn't it? The growth is not the problem because India is a big enough economy. It's going to push on forward. But the fact that you have this level of government debt, this level of fiscal deficit, the balancing act is getting increasingly difficult, isn't it?
No, first of all, you inquired as to what I expect from the budget.
Okay, I will ask you that first then again.
First of all, I'm not a great believer that a budget solves all the problems.
Okay.
Policies come during the course of the year. And budget merely tells you your expenditure, revenue, deficit, etc. But what I would be looking forward to, we had an interim budget in February. Certain assumptions were made. To what extent is she going to accept them? I think if you remember when Mr. Jaitley introduced his budget, he said, I'm not changing anything what Mr. Chidambaram had said. Now, in the budget, we already see there is a shortfall in revenue, there is a shortfall in expenditure during the last 2 months. Based on that...
Increase in expenditure?
No, decrease. That is how the deficit was maintained. So therefore, with that base, Mr. Piyush Goyal had showed an increase in revenue. How is she going to solve that out?
Right, that's the top thing on your mind as you look at this budget.
As far as policies are concerned, they come every day.
Fair enough.
Budget only gives you a direction, broadly give you a feel-good factor.
And so in your mind, how do you make up for the shortfall in revenue is the top thing that you would look for from this budget?
I mean, at the end of the day, expenditure income was indicated, and in 6 weeks there is a shortfall. I have never seen any company giving a presentation on 1st February as to what the situation will be at end of March, failing to do so. And
I have a question. I have a question for Mr. Gautam Chakrabarti. Before you answer the previous question as to what you expect from the budget, how do we expect a great budget where in the last 25 years we have the highest cost of land, labor, capital, electricity, railway fee. These are the basics which can be legislated over a period of time. These legislations don't take place. The land bill is still in the standing committee, and then we expect the big bang from a budget.
What I would expect from the budget are 3 things, which is growth, growth, and more growth. In the first 2 years of this government, with the kind of mandate that it has, I think the government should go all out for growth, do all that it takes to push growth in any way possible. Without growth, there is no jobs. Without growth, there is no prosperity, no Sensex. How does she manage to do this growth? There are several things, as we will discuss during the day. But most of all is, I think the biggest debate is between should she go for a fiscal expansion or should she remain fiscally conservative. I believe that she should go for a fiscal expansion, even if it means a little more inflation, because right now there is a crisis approaching us, not only India, globally. There are just far too many non-economic reasons that are eating into economic and creating economic tensions.
Such as, if you can just...
Such as the US-China trade war, increasing inward-lookingness of various countries one after another.
By that you mean protectionism?
Protectionism is one aspect, but several others also. Okay. And investments, for instance.
Are you saying it's like new mercantilism?
I wouldn't label it yet. Okay. But I think that a crisis is on its way. I'm not sure whether it will be of the kind 2008, 2009, but it's on its way. Why should we wait for the crisis to come? I think with the political mandate that this government has and the time at its disposal, this is the time to fix things, mend things, preempt it, get growth back, increase the denominator, and rework the fiscal over the next 2 years.
But Joyita, is it possible, because the budgets we have seen from 2014 and 19 have been very incremental, you know, it was never a budget like 1991. Those were incremental baby steps.
Absolutely. I think the way the whole India's growth story has changed. But this is a very important budget, I would say, understanding. I'll take from Gautam the whole... in fact, the normal techniques and the formulas that we used to use to boost growth and all is not going to work this time. And so we really have to go out of box and think how we can solve. So I think it's very important we should work on looking into more boosting the inward economy as much as possible, and also look into the ways. So out-of-box thinking, I will think, and we have to be innovative. Innovation not only boosting our industries, but also innovation in fiscal planning.
Right. If I were to ask you, take off from what Joyita was talking about.
Disruption.
Disruption, do something that has not been done before, because that's the only way to do this tightrope walk of growth versus inflation.
Well, actually, this is the first thing that we should recognize is that the finance minister's degrees of freedom to boost expenditure are very limited.
Yes.
See, if you look at any budget in the last few years, roughly 51-52% of the outlay is taken care of by just four heads. Interest payments, which account for about 24%, subsidies, about 11%, defense, another 11%, pensions, about 6%. Add them up, you're looking at 51-52%. So 51-52% of the expenditure
comes preloaded
is preempted.
Yeah.
You know, so that is straight away. To that, if you add the costs of establishment, that is central government's establishment, you will find that the finance minister has very few degrees of freedom left in which to do this balancing act. Now, the second point is, as one of the panelists mentioned about fiscal prudence or the lack of it. I am not in favor of throwing fiscal prudence to the winds, for the simple reason that it has a very, very damaging effect throughout the economy if your fiscal imbalance increases, because one of the main factors will be that you're going to be crowding out private investment. And if private investment is going to be the key to growth, then you're actually hitting at growth straight away. So I think that in my view, I don't think the minister is going to get into a fiscally imprudent situation.
Karthikeya, I'm going to quickly take a dipstick poll. I was going to come to you. Between fiscal expansion and fiscal prudence, we have one vote for fiscal prudence, one vote for fiscal expansion. Mr. Khattar?
You see how I agree. Fiscal prudence is required, otherwise you'll have a problem in FDI coming. And we don't have enough savings, we need FDI. Out of the box, she said, we have 10 PSUs who account for 82% of our losses. I think the government could go in a big way in disinvestment, strategic sale and all, which will not affect anything else but raise more resources. As you mentioned, are they brave enough to do it? Mr. Bajpai had done it. I can give you an example of Maruti. Government had invested 16 crores. At the end, they got 6,000 crores. So there is a lot of value lying in it, as long as it is properly packaged, properly sold. That's the only way where you can have fiscal prudence and still raise money for investment.
So out of 3, 2:1 for fiscal prudence being the top priority. Joyita, your vote. Fiscal prudence versus fiscal expansion.
I will always go for fiscal prudence. I would
3:1. 3:1. Kartikeya, that's very clear. So the mandate for Nirmala Sitharaman from everybody else is very clear. Whatever you do, please maintain the fiscal. 3:1 still. We're talking about the majority vote here, be it the elections or the budget. So in both cases, it's very clear, like the mandate, Kartikeya, that Nirmala Sitharaman will be held to court for her fiscal prudence.
You know, Mr. Jha, you were talking about the growth, investments in the economy, but I was just going through the data when you were talking about that. For us to grow at 8%, it will require investment of infrastructure. Investment of 1 trillion, where do we get that money from? Ultimately, you need that money to create that little surge. So where are we going to get that from?
Asking me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. You see, that is, it is futile to expect the government to produce that kind of money.
Okay.
It has to be produced by the private sector by making the environment suitable for the private sector to step in. See, even earlier, when there was a push at infrastructure growth, it was expected that government would put in maybe 30%, 70% would come from the private sector. So similar kind of formula needs to be devised. And as far as the government is concerned, instead of raising taxes, because I think we are already a pretty highly taxed country. I mean, if you look at our, corporate taxes, the recent report said that our corporate taxes, effective rate of taxation is about 48.3%.
What should be the ideal?
Well, global average is 24. So therefore, an ideal, of course, in this kind of situation, there is no ideal, but the average is about 24.
Lesser the better.
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is that we are already heavily taxed, both corporate sector as well as individuals. So you have to look at other sources of funding. Now, one of the issues that has been brought out by the economic survey also is that you look at non-tax revenues. Mm-hmm. Non-tax revenues. One source, of course, is higher dividends from the public sector companies. The other is asset monetization, which again they've talked about in the economic survey. The public sector undertakings have huge assets. Whether you want to, monetize some of it. For instance, railways and the defense ministry, they are the 2 largest landholders in the country.
Absolutely.
Whether you need to, do something about proper utilization of that land, otherwise monetize it.
I have also a question for Mr. Sikhamane. How do you boost spending in the economy, which is not high right now?
Because I've been isolated on the fiscal side. Let me just let me just defend myself.
Okay.
Under normal circumstances, I agree with the panel. My point is
not in 2019-20.
Right now, I agree. There should be fiscal prudence, but these are not normal circumstances. I think we are heading towards a crisis. My point to increase the fiscal space or expansion is only to ward off the crisis. And I say this because while disinvestment may be mathematically or on an Excel spreadsheet an attractive mode to collect finances, including the fact that the capital markets are waiting for depth as more public sector undertakings are disinvested, there will be greater depth in the market and the market is ready for it. But the political reason, the politics of disinvesting is going to get in the way. In the meantime, the crisis will hit us. Instead of working when the crisis hit us with some stimulus packages, this sector and that sector, it's better to preempt it. That's my short point. Second, you asked how private sector can be reignited, private sector investment, which is very low, including household savings, by the way, which finance the private sector indirectly. I think the first thing is to get rid of this trust deficit between the government or the state in general and private sector entrepreneurs. Whenever there is a problem, an entire an entire feeder industry is put under the scanner. For instance, right now there is a problem has been said, a direction has been given that you will not account for the next 5 years, okay, which is very good. Who will account for it? Second, there is a credit rating problem with the same company, you are putting credit rating agencies under the scanner. Any problem, you are putting the entire scanner. Now, entire infrastructure that holds the companies together in terms of their balance sheets, in terms of their debt valuations, in terms of their stock market valuations, in terms of their ratings under the scanner. This cannot work. Every business failure is not a fraud. Every bad loan is not a fraud. The fact that there can be business failures for which now there is an IBC already in place, let it work through the legal system. Why do we need to just destroy everything?
No, it's a very fine point you have raised. Is it because of the fact, and it's a political question, that the way NPA controversies have been covered, the NPA controversy in the sense that the public lending by the public sector banks, the way it has covered the private sector, is it because of that?
See, there was an old way.
Before we get ahead, I love how this topic has been discussed without any names over here. Please continue.
There was an old way of doing business. This government has come and started or is initiating a new way of doing business. The new way of doing business includes IBC. It includes the Benami Transaction Act. It includes GST, where there is very little room for anything, for money to escape the legitimate economy. We are now in the transition point. How do we move from the fast way, and you cannot blame anybody, that was the way, that was the reality there. How do we move from the past to the present? We are stuck here, we are like Trishanku. We are stuck between the heaven and the earth. How do we move towards the earth is the question. How do we get into the new way?
You know,
heaven and the earth really lit you up.
No, I'm going to the basics. Everyone talks about manufacturing and employment. It's not going to take place so soon. If the industry, various industries are working at 60-65% capacity, there is no way that they are going to invest more. You can talk about anything, it will never happen. So you have to create demand, etc. That is a part of the development. But you know, there are certain sectors in which you can create huge employment with least investment. He mentioned about textiles, handlooms, handicraft, mining. We are importing 200 million tons of coal. We are not opening up the mining. What is required is a policy change. That's only what is required today. You're spending billions of dollars on import. We are very strong in leather industry. It's gone down by half. Gas. You know, I have worked in Kanpur and Agra. I know 70% of the people are unemployed here. So these are the things which can take place without investment, only with change in policy and some focus and the management. These are areas, real estate is held up.
So sorry to stop you because you were talking about employment. You know, the data shows that MSMEs, you know,
I was coming to MSMEs.
You know, they employ 23% of the workforce. Large companies, they have 77% of the workforce. But the manufacturing of MSME is 85%. And large companies as 15%. You know, my question to you is...
Aggregators. Let's face it, large companies are aggregators of small companies. So you can really work out their value addition and their total part of it. After all, car company produces only 20% within the four walls. 80% is taken outside. So, you know, these data can be misleading at times. But MSMEs are the ones who really create employment and who really support the big companies. You know, big company which will come from abroad will first find out what is the structure of SMEs in the country.
But the critics say that, you know, we are encouraging MSMEs to remain small.
That's correct. They should be allowed to grow. I know garment exporters who have got 40 companies running. What's the logic in that? Because that's a part of this. So, you know, these are very small policy calibrations, these things, and which can have a huge effect. Without asking for so much of funds are required, other things are required. They are all there. Handloom is there. Your rural area is there. People are, but I'm very happy that our e-commerce portal is starting exporting Badoi carpets overseas. Now that is what has to be encouraged. And this is, you know, also the rural part of it. Next generation is not coming. So handloom, leather, mining. Mining में आप allow कर दीजिएगा, private chaps will bring their investment. I think Mr. Agarwal of Vedanta has been saying day in and day out, India is sitting on a gold mine in mining, open up mining to various sectors. So there are a number of things that can be done which are not a part of the budget, but which can have the effect that we are talking about, overall growth and employment.
Right, Joyita, before we go to the other guest who's joining us, Joyita, you've been waiting to say something on what Mr. Khattar was talking about.
Absolutely. I just want to say that, we should focus, if we really want to boost the economy, understanding the size of the population we have, we really have to do something to boost our rural economy, which is also the focus. And here I totally agree with him that we need to boost the small units and all, and we really have to look into those infrastructures we have to create. And here I strongly support that we have to focus on the infrastructures. It's not only the reforms and the infrastructure, and here private sectors come in also. So these are, if we really want to go ahead, and the options are there. So if we are serious, if we can focus, we can go ahead. And
it's such an irony that, year after year when we discuss budget, we talk about infrastructure in agricultural sector. And a basic thing like cold storage chain links are literally absent when you are in northern India, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Bundelkhand. They're completely absent in the northern part of India, which is like basic to any agricultural investment, if you want to boost the local economy.
Fair enough. That the fact that cold chain also helps the people in the cities to get fresher produce. So it's a win-win for both the rural economy and the urban economy.
See, another thing, one talks about China getting into a problem and many companies transferring their facilities. They are all going to Vietnam. Why? Vietnam has two things: educated workforce and women participation. But one reads that Vietnam is becoming saturated. It's becoming saturated, there's a chance for doing it, and that again needs policy, not funds. But what really surprises me, that we are earmarking 20,000 crores for electric vehicles. We are not spending it on health and education. Can we prioritize? There is crying need of investment in public health and public education. All this is being driven to the private sector, and we've seen the effects of it. I think whatever funds are there, can we use them which has the maximum effect, and not that we are going to become a global leader in electric vehicles. No way, we cannot be a global leader in anything.
Far from it. Not at least right now, for the next decade or so. I wanted to ask you this, Mr. Jha. The rural economy has been having it difficult for in corporate terminology, quarter after quarter, for multiple quarters, 8 quarters, 9 quarters, 12 quarters. We've lost count of it. And clearly, the lack of growth and the problems with the growth, the overall growth number, is because the rural growth is suffering. And not enough is spoken about how you're going to boost the rural economy per se, because there is an unemployment problem. There is a seasonal unemployment problem over there. I can go on. What do you think, how much do you think this will play on Nirmala Sitharaman's mind when it comes to this budget?
No, I think she has to address the agrarian distress. And as you pointed out, in the last 4-5 years particularly, agricultural growth has been very, very low. In fact, the average of the last 5 years is less than 2%.
Wow. That's the story, isn't it? 2% is less than 2% rural growth.
Whereas everybody says that agriculture must grow at least 4% if you want, sort of the rural economy to partake of the developmental gains. Now, here the one problem basically has been the MSPs. The MSPs in the last 4-5 years have not been increased to the same extent as the cost of cultivation has increased. So farmer incomes have come down. And that is again affecting the rural economy. In fact, I know of cases in Andhra where the rice cultivators decided not to cultivate their land because the price that they were getting for the produce was less than the cost of production. Now, that is something which, we do have procurement. FCI procures, and on paper, 23 crops are supposed to be procured. But A, they procure from very limited areas, and B, the number of crops they actually procure is very much lesser than 23. So I think we need to, the pricing mechanism of agricultural products need to be enhanced.
Right. Live visuals from Parliament started to pour in. This is the budget document. Well, they'll be distributed once the paper is present in Lok Sabha, but these are the copies for the members of the House. Once these copies are distributed, then the press gets it. And most of the time now it's online.
Kartikeya, speaking out of experience, time and again, number of budget copies he's received from the Parliament. But ladies and gentlemen, latest visuals, in fact, on your screens from a short while ago of the budget documents signed, sealed and delivered to the Parliament. Lots of expectations riding on it. We're continuing to build up to the budget, which will get underway in less than half an hour right now. We're about 10:35, Kartikeya.
Yes.
At 10:35, we have another guest joining us, don't we? We have Mr. Siraj Hussain, former Agriculture Secretary, joining us on the broadcast. Mr. Hussain, thank you so much for being with us. So we were just discussing agriculture. Even as we discuss things like fiscal deficit, fiscal prudence versus fiscal expansion, the agriculture sector will be crucial, and the measures concerning the sector will form a huge part of Nirmala Sitharaman's first budget. At least that's the expectation. Mr. Hussain, if you can hear us.
I think there's a bit of a...
Sorry, say it again?
Yes, we were just asking you about how in this budget, Nirmala Sitharaman's first budget, boosting the rural economy, boosting the agriculture sector is going to be a top priority.
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. Of course, I'm quite confident that the government will continue to accord high priority to the agriculture sector. And in the budget, I would like to see a roadmap for investment of 25 lakh crores of rupees in agriculture and rural infrastructure. However, we must remember that the rural infrastructure differs from state to state. For example, the warehouses which are registered with WDRA, out of about 1,400 warehouses in the country which are registered with Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority, some 350 are in Madhya Pradesh alone, while Jharkhand has 1, West Bengal has only 1, Bihar has only 9. So a lot of the private investment in agriculture, as also in other sectors, depends on the investment climate in the state. For improving the investment climate, the center does have a role, but I think the states have a more important role to play. We have seen that in the private entrepreneurs guarantee scheme in eastern states, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, the response of private sector to construct godowns for which rent is to be paid by the Food Corporation of India or the state agencies for 10 years, even for that the response of private sector is very poor. So for attracting private investment in rural infrastructure, the states also have to play a very important role.
So my question is that, yes, the investment of 25 lakh crore, as you said, is required, but how do you make agriculture profitable?
You see, it is wrong to say that agriculture is unprofitable for everyone. We know, for example, that the farmers who own more than 2 hectares of land in Punjab, their average income is 50,000 rupees a month. Now, that is not a small amount. So, it is true that the farmers who grow their crops in rain-fed areas face more challenges than the farmers who grow their crops in areas which are irrigated, because the government is already giving a number of subsidies. It is true that some farmers are still not able to receive good prices, and this problem has been accentuated after demonetization. The markets have still not recovered fully from that shock, but the situation also varies from year to year. So, for example, last year the farmers of cotton and maize received good prices. Indian agriculture, whether we like it or not, is also integrated globally with global prices. So there is a lot of impact. There are a number of things which are to be done. The government has taken a number of initiatives, and I am sure that more investment in irrigation and infrastructure will facilitate farmers getting a higher income.
So how has successive governments dealt with the problem of hidden unemployment when it comes to the agriculture sector?
No, it is true that currently agriculture contributes just about 14% of GDP, but it employs close to half of the population. Obviously, it is very clear that so much of population cannot be supported by agriculture. And for that, ironically, the answer is not in agriculture. The answer is in other sectors. Now, we have seen between 2008 and 2014 enormous growth in the construction sector, which absorbed a lot of rural people who moved away from agriculture to construction. Now, for a variety of reasons, the construction sector suffered a very huge setback after demonetization. So the movement of labor from agriculture to other sectors will make agriculture also more viable, and it will bring more income to farmers by way of wages in other sectors.
So don't you think that, the problems of agricultural sectors have been held hostage by populist politics? Because you see, when Bharatiya Janata Party lost elections in 3 successive states, suddenly they remembered SOPs, which is direct benefits to farmers, because Congress had actually announced them during the election. So do you think that popular politics somehow restrains government both at the state and center to take strong measures to reform the sector?
No, you are right. You see, all governments are populists. It would be wrong to blame any one party for that. All governments would like to win elections, so I would not blame any government or BJP government for that. It is true that the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Yojana was launched on the eve of elections for directly transferring 6,000 rupees to the bank accounts of small and marginal farmers. However, now this government has the mandate to undertake deep reforms in the agriculture sector. Whether they will take it or not in this budget, next budget, I really don't know, because these reforms require a lot of consensus building with the political parties who may not have won the elections, but still they play an important role in a democratic setup. So what to do with electricity subsidy, for example? The electricity subsidy in Punjab, Haryana and other states has contributed to the water levels going down. Now, should the government withdraw subsidy? First of all, that subsidy is provided by the state government. The centre has to persuade the state government to withdraw that subsidy so that the water levels do not go down further. What should we do to food subsidy? Shanta Kumar committee submitted a report to the government in Modi 1 government. However, the government did not accept, because the reforms in the agriculture and food sector are not very easy to undertake. People have to understand this. They affect large population and there has to be a political consensus. So I'm hoping that the government will try to build up that consensus.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us. I'll take this question to our panelists. So, we have been talking about reforms, but the fact of the matter is that reforms don't take place. After Chaudhry Charan Singh presented the most populist budget, when he announced SOPs, which we known as the loan waivers, which became part of the budget. Since then, subsequently, with every electoral crisis, you have a better loan facility for the farmer. Is there a different vision which can accommodate the interests of the farmers, coupled with a good growth? Or do we really need to create a large subsidy infrastructure for them?
If you can answer the question.
Okay. No, in my view, agriculture has to be made viable. At the moment...
Viable is the word.
At the moment, in large parts of the country, agriculture is not viable. That is why you have farmer distress. And instead of looking at that, of course, the point is also that agriculture is a state subject, so Government of India can only do that much, can't go the whole hog. But so far, instead of looking at that, increasing productivity in agriculture should be the key. Instead of looking at increasing productivity, we have really gone around giving out doles. Even the interim budget, there were really all aspects of doles only were dealt with, obviously because it was an election-oriented budget.
Look at the interim budget.
Yeah, I'm talking of the interim budget. So essentially, we have shied away from looking at gains in productivity in agriculture. That is the key.
Right, Mr. Jha, please stay with us. We have another very special guest joining us, Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani, joining us on this broadcast from Mumbai. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on WION World is One as we build up to this budget. First thoughts from your side on what you personally are expecting from this budget.
I think there are huge expectations with the new government because they have a clean mandate. I think two aspects have really to be focused on. One is infrastructure. I think that is extremely important on its own standing. I think the country's infrastructure requires a lot of support, urban infrastructure, national highways and others. But the second part is more important, which I believe is in employment. I think what we really need to focus is the rising unemployment which has taken place. We need to really do. for which investments to move into, again, infrastructure, housing, textiles, and those items where we have a large amount of employment per rupee that we put into. So I think the finance minister must focus on this area for this. The second important thing which I think the finance minister needs to focus on is liquidity. In the last few months, we see a lot of money lying with the banks. More than 1,75,000 crores of rupees are with the banking system. But they're not going into the market. So the market is devoid of liquidity. It does not have money. The entire system is getting locked up or locked jammed. And I think something needs to be done very quickly. Post the IL&FS crisis, this has been compounded. And I think we need to find an avenue out in order to do so. I don't know what is the immediate measure, but I think a one-time rollover by the Reserve Bank of India of existing loans should be done. That was done in 2008 during the Lehman crisis, which was worldwide. I think the crisis of liquidity today is much higher than what it was in 2008. So I think two aspects. One, they need to do larger investments into infrastructure, including railways, of course, ports, railways, highways, and of course the boost in terms of housing needs to be much, much more. Of course, we are reaching the Prime Minister's target of affordable housing, but I think we need to now look into rental housing as another aspect of housing, because worldwide, people do not expect that everyone will own a house, but everyone should also get an affordable house on rental. And I think that's an immediate need to make a new rental housing policy and needs adequate funds to support that.
Niranjan Hiranandani, National President, NAREDCO, and Senior Vice President, ASSOCHAM, joining us with his budget wish list, even as we count down to the presentation of the budget. But also now being joined by a very special guest. We have Dr. Andrew Freris now joining us on the broadcast live from Athens in Greece. Dr. Andrew Freris, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. He's the CEO of Ecognosis Advisory. Thank you so much for being with us on this big day. First thoughts from your mind. We've heard everything from unemployment to fiscal prudence to agricultural sector needing a boost, rural economy needing a boost being discussed. What do you think of all the top priorities would be immediate for India's finance minister?
Well, on the basis of what the Modi administration has done in the Modi WION government, I'm afraid my expectations are very, very modest and very small. First, I don't believe in the government driving growth. I believe in the government letting free market forces in the context of the Indian social environment and in the context of the political consensus of driving the economy. So fiddling about with income tax rates and corporate tax rates is not going to create the kind of an employment boosts that India needs. The second point is there has been consistent avoidance of the major reforms. And I understand why. There is no political there is no political consensus of those, and specifically reform of the labor market, reform of the land market, a reform of the banking system. We're complaining about absence of liquidity, inability to lend. Some of the state-controlled banks still have as much as 30% non-performing loans, and the administration is doing absolutely nothing about that. And I would consider this to be much more of a high priority than deciding to spend more on highways. We heard about highways, we heard about railways in Modi WION administration, and I will be delighted to hear a lot more. But as I said, my expectations are very, very modest indeed. At the same time, the truth is that the political consensus within the Indian society is not favoring a free market force complete restructuring of the Indian economy, in the same way that under a very different system of political control and consensus, the Chinese did. I'm not for one moment suggesting that India should do what China did, but I'm afraid here you had a very large economy, a very poor economy that liberated market forces, especially with the aid of foreign investment, and now is the third biggest economy in the world in the space of less than 30 years. Well, there must be a lesson here. So what I'm expecting here is a lot more good intentions, a lot more promises, and a lot more twiddling on the knobs of the economy, but basically nothing which is going to excite me, and I'm afraid also nothing that I could foresee is going to be applicable that will really begin the transformation of the Indian economy in the next 5 years. Final point is my own calculations, and I've been a very close observant of both the Indian economy and the Chinese economy in the last 30 years. By close, I mean I travel frequently. I am there. I watch what is happening. India can easily grow 10, 12, even 14% easily if the structural changes are there, and the structural changes are not going to be there. It's as simple as that.
Dr. Andrew Ferris, there with the perspective. Sir, we have a guest on our panel who wants to ask you a question. We have Mr. Jagdish Khattar joining us. Actually, Mr. Jagdish Khattar has a response to you, Dr. Ferris. Mr. Khattar, go ahead.
No, I agree with him that we can grow much faster if we make structural changes. Now, I have a suggestion on this as a continuation of the same. In India, nothing succeeds like success. Okay? Now you have a problem, this is a state subject, this is a central subject, etc., etc. Can this government take two state governments of their own party and make them into a model state with all that is required from the state as well as the center, and set them as a model, education, health, agriculture, everything. Then others can be replicated, and then I agree that you will have an example to do so, and you can go ahead and do it.
All right, Dr. Ferris, that's the word coming in from Jagdish Khattar. We have the panel. But I want to quickly ask you as well, how do you think, the West is viewing India, the Indian economy, and the Indian budget is at this point in time?
Budget chalu.
Why can't we have a model?
Dr. Ferris.
Yes. Looking through all the media, the Western world is looking at the budget with utter indifference, I'm afraid. The only place where I can find some mentions of it is only on the Indian media, not outside. And the reason for that is that the Modi administration won a very substantial victory, and the concern, at least on the Western side, was the role and the future of democracy in India rather than what the Modi administration would do. Now, it's none of my business to even mention or even comment on what the Indian electorate have decided. This is a free, fully functioning democracy, and whether I like it or not, or anybody else likes it or not, is absolutely irrelevant. So I'm afraid for the time being, it is let's say, polite indifference.
We are also joined by Mr. Rajiv Zimri, co-chair, FICCI Taxation Committee. Sir, thank you for joining us. My question to you is, I know we are really running short of time because at sharp 11 we'll cut to Lok Sabha.
Yes.
So, Mr. Zimri, what are your expectations from this budget?
Well, I think the circumstances are all lined up for the government to make some real bold decisions. They have the mandate, it's their second term, there are no electoral compulsions at this point in time, and there are real decisions that are needed. Several panel members have talked about the need for access to capital by the industry, employment creation, which will lead to better consumption, but it will also lead to, better manufacturing and other activity. So I do believe that this is the time for making some real decisions, and I'm sure that I will see some real bold decisions in this budget. So that's what I'm very eager and excited to see. Yes, we all can tinker with tax rates here and there and some standard deductions here and there, but I think this is the time where I do hope and expect some real bold decisions on major economic issues. Biggest to my mind amongst them is how do we create employment, which directly is connected with what happens to manufacturing and other commercial sector. So I do hope some real bold decisions are being made in this budget.
And as far as India Inc. is concerned, what do you think India Inc. is hoping for from this budget?
Well, there are already policy announcements that have been made in the past, about bringing down the corporate tax rates, dealing with the MAT, dealing with some of the issues on GST, and we do expect some of those things will come. Yes, there may be taking away of many exemptions, which has been a long-drawn policy. I think there should be no major change in those policies, but better implementation of those policies. We're all clear that the exemptions should be withdrawn, but the tax rates also must come down. Similarly, on GST, we already have been hearing about the fact that the rate rationalization need to happen from several bands into smaller number of bands. I think more implementation of those policies and continuum of those policies would be a very important thing to see, because we can't keep having too many changes. We do have to make plans on a long-term policy basis, and I do hope and expect that policy momentum will continue, and better implementation and faster implementation we will see in this budget.
But the larger issue is that we are talking, when we talk about this budget, the context is the volatility of international trade vis-a-vis China and America, and that's the elephant in the room which has not been discussed.
Yeah, and add Iran to that. And we're existing in times of global turmoil. Our main oil imports is in trouble because of geopolitical issues. We have the US-China trade war, where again we're being forced to pick sides over here, and it's not an easy time for a big, large economy like India to take decisions. And in that sense, this is not going to be easy for Nirmala Sitharaman. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Chikkarmani?
Completely. And that's what I mentioned. When there is global uncertainty and the potential of a global crisis breaking out, that's exactly what I mean.
I told you
we need to set our house in order. We need to get ready for these changes, the global changes that are happening. What will happen? For instance, today everybody is saying that because of the US-China trade war, countries like India will benefit. Okay, fine. What happens if tomorrow they shake hands? Are we going to not benefit? These kind of uncertainties are being thrown up by the global system today. I believe we do need to look inward. To look inward, we need to make it easy for our entrepreneurs to do business. I mentioned the earlier part, how for the smallest of problems, we destroy an entire institution. This kind of thinking is not the government. It's India as a state. Put everybody in jail. Then what?
Who's going to do the business?
Who will do the business? Who will do the accounting?
How many thousand people have gone outside in the last 2 years?
700 independent directors have left have resigned from listed companies.
I think it also requires some sort of re-evaluation. In 2014-15, people spoke about Make in India and Made in India. Yeah. That has not been evaluated properly as to what has happened in Make in India and what happened in Made in India.
You don't have to evaluate. Nothing has happened.
Nothing much.
So only when nothing much has, but there's a problem there.
But why?
But again, coming back to what he's saying, does budget deal with these things or the concerned ministries deal with it? I think that is important. We are discussing budget. There are many things required, but the ministry have to do on to day-to-day basis.
Then let's keep this discussion specific to budget, because a lot of things we're talking about agriculture, rural economy. Now that the responsibility of that is primarily with the state governments and not with the central government, and not consequently with the budget.
But in agriculture, on agriculture,
I'm glad you
have your inflation has been reduced because of food prices, and that is where the government has worked very hard and caused rural distress. So that is where the government.
So it's a balance. So basically, but on agriculture, and we were talking about the constitutional nature of agriculture as a state subject versus a center. So when it comes to giving benefits to farmers, the central it's almost like an automatic knee jerk that the center needs to allocate more money. Yeah. But what happens to the rich farmers? Why aren't we taxing rich farmers?
This question is asked before every single budget in India, and there is no answer to this question.
No, there is an answer.
There is an answer,
yes.
Okay.
In fact,
again, that is with the state governments.
No, the answer was given by one of the finance ministers recently. He said we are in politics, not in charity. Okay.
But we are being extremely charitable to the big farmers in this country.
So let me finish my argument there.
Okay.
Now, not only is it a state subject, the Finance Commission devolution to the states in terms of giving the shares, state of money in public finances has also increased. Every Finance Commission except one has increased the state, the allocation to the states. Today it's at 42%. Next Finance Commission, it will be more. Does the center still need to be responsible for farmer distress?
No, I think you have made a very relevant point. Throughout 60s and 70s, with the implementation of Mandal Commission, it's the rich farmer through the cooperative movement which have monopolized power in various legislative assemblies. If you see the representation of rich farmers in various assemblies throughout India, they are in a dominant position. And that political economy perpetuates itself. And that is why, as you said, that no one will break that equilibrium, because you break that equilibrium, you break your vote models, then it affects you constituency by constituency.
Joyida, so much of politics gets discussed in economics in India, isn't it? It's difficult to do pure economics in India at home.
I think it's very important if there is need for a cultural change as such, and that is not happening even in economics. So we really have to look into those issues more from economic point of view, but in a democracy, politics can be overlooked.
But I like the point you make, the change of culture in economics, Mr. Jha, Mr. Chikramane, Mr. Khattar, that's something that's a lot of people are looking at, isn't it? It's a change in the way we approach economics in this country. We have had some set patterns. We've had some breaking of set patterns. Where do you think it's going in terms of the culture of viewing the economy of this country? If I can ask Mr. Khattar that question.
Make it simple for people to understand that what we are asking for is in your interest. Can we do that? You see, if you go with big, this thing is very difficult. But step by step, education, exposure. I mean, let's face it, our rural people can understand economics, what is in their interest. Can we do it?
Better financial literacy, economic literacy.
This is the behavioral change that has been mentioned in the survey, in the economic survey.
The blue sky thinking.
No, blue sky thinking and nudging people towards acceptable behavior or better behavior in terms of economic gains.
Right, because
basically what he means is you stop looking at economics through the eyes of economists
Yes.
and start humanizing it. There is no perfect market. There is no perfect competition. There are individual biases that get in. You are not sitting here doing this job because it's your swadharma. There is a big reason why you are sitting here, all of us here. There is money. There is what you want to do, there is entertainment, there is leisure, etc. These kind of imponderables, which form part of nudge, as the economist Thaler has mentioned, is there in the economic survey chapter 4.
And all of that means that more and more people in India should take time out and watch the budget speech presentation, hear it through and through, and then continue watching WION World is One, because we'll be bringing you some expert analysis at the end of this budget speech. Let's cut across live to the Indian Parliament and listen in.
श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण जी, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी।
धन्यवाद जी। स्पीकर सर।
माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं वर्ष 2019-20 का बजट प्रस्तुत करने के लिए खड़ी हुई हूं। हाल में जो चुनाव हुए, जिसने आज इस आम सभा का, इस महान सभा में इतने सारे संसद सदस्यों को भेजा, उसने एक चमकता हुआ और स्थिर भारत की परिकल्पना को साक्षात्कार किया। ऐसा पहले कभी नहीं हुआ था और भारत ने इसी चुनाव के परिणाम स्वरूप हम इस सम्मानीय सदन में आज पहुंचे हैं। इतिहास में ऐसा पहले कभी नहीं हुआ था जब भारत ने बड़ी संख्या में मत प्राप्त करके
Voters turnout was highest at 67.9%. Every section, young, old, first-time voters, voters since the first general election, women, all turned up to stamp their approval of a performing government. Through their unambiguous and firm mandate, they have reaffirmed putting the nation first. The people of India have validated the two goals for our country's future, that of national security and economic growth. The first term of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led NDA government stood out as a performing government, a government whose signature was in the last mile delivery. Between 2014 and 19, we provided a rejuvenated center-stage dynamic, cooperative federalism, GST Council, and a strident commitment to fiscal discipline. And we have assisted by the Niti Aayog, a broad-based think tank. We have showed by our deeds that the principle reform, perform, transform can succeed. On many programs and initiatives, we had worked on unprecedented scale. Average amount spent on food security per year approximately doubled during 2014-19 compared to the preceding 5 years. Number of patents issued more than trebled 3 times in 2017-18 as against the number of patents issued pre-14. Our last mile delivery stood out, and the unknown citizen in every nook and corner of our country felt the difference. Our objective was and continues to be मजबूत देश के लिए मजबूत नागरिक. Mega programs and services which we initiated and delivered during those 5 years will now be further accelerated. We shall further simplify procedures, incentivize performance, reduce red tape, and make the best use of technology, just as we did earlier. I am confident we will achieve our goals. Chanakya Niti Sutra says, Karya Purusha Karena Lakshyam Sampadayate. Meaning, with determined human efforts, the task will surely be completed. An Urdu couplet, pardon me my pronunciation, Yakin ho to koi rasta nikalta hai. Yakin ho to koi rasta nikalta hai. Hava ki oat bhi lekar charag jalta hai. Vision for the decade. Our economy was at approximately $1.85 trillion when we formed the government in 2014. Within 5 years, it has reached $2.7 trillion. Hence, it is well within our capacity to reach the $5 trillion in the next few years. In the interim budget of 2019-20 presented in February 2019, we gave ourselves a vision for the decade. I flagged here the 10 points of our vision laid before us. Building physical, social infrastructure, digital India reaching every sector of the economy, pollution-free India with green Mother Earth and blue skies. Make in India with particular emphasis on MSMEs, startups, defense manufacturing, automobiles, electronics, fabs and batteries, and medical devices. Water management, clean rivers, blue economy, space programs, Gaganyaan, Chandrayaan, and satellite programs, self-sufficiency and export of food grains, pulses, oil seeds, fruits and vegetables, healthy society, Ayushman Bharat, well-nourished women and children, safety of citizens, Team India with Jan Bhagidari, minimum government, maximum governance. These were the vision we set before ourselves. With this vision set before us, with the mandate given by its people, we are determined to take India to that height that it richly deserves. I strongly believe that with the clear-headed leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, we can achieve our goal. So what are the plans to reach the 5 trillion economy? The Indian economy will grow to become a $3 trillion economy in the current year itself. It is now the 6th largest in the world. 5 years ago, it was at the 11th position. In purchasing power parity terms, we are in fact the 3rd largest economy already, only next to China and the USA. To attain this and more, we need to continue undertaking many structural reforms. In the last 5 years, we saw many big reforms, in particular, indirect taxation, bankruptcy, and real estate. While these reforms were happening here in the Parliament, the common man's life was being changed through mudra, loans, to help him to do his business, and through several programs, it was being ensured that his or her kitchen had become smokeless. his or her house got electricity connection, and women's dignity was respected with the provision of toilets in home. The common man was served even as a major transformational reforms were being rolled out. And for this to continue, we need to invest heavily in infrastructure, in digital economy, and on job creation in small and medium firms. Respected Speaker, sir, it took us over 55 years for the Indian economy to reach $1 trillion. But when the country and her people's hearts are filled with Asha, Vishwas, and Akanksha, that is, when the hearts are filled with hope, trust and aspirations, we, in just 5 years, added $1 trillion. As I said, today we are nearing a $3 trillion level. So when we aspire to reach a $5 trillion level, many wonder if it's possible. If we can appreciate our citizens' purusharth or their goals of human spirit or pursuit, filled with the inherent desire to progress, led by the dedicated leadership present in this House, the target is eminently achievable. All of India's private sector industries, small, medium, or large, have played a substantial role in growing our economy. I recall the words of an eminent industry leader who said that his company's growth has always aligned itself with India's growth, before and post-independence. So if before independence, India Inc. understood Swadeshi, today they understand Make in India. We do not look down upon legitimate profit earning. Gone are the days of policy paralysis and license quota control regimes. India Inc. are India's job creators. They are the nation's wealth creators. Together with mutual trust, we can gain, catalyze fast, and attain sustained growth. I wish to propose a number of initiatives as part of a framework for kick-starting the virtuous cycle of domestic and foreign investments. Connectivity is the lifeblood of our economy. The government has given a massive push to all forms of physical connectivity through Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, industrial corridors, dedicated freight corridors, Bharatmala and Sagarmala projects, Jal Marg Vikas and Udan schemes. While the industrial corridors would improve infrastructure availability for greater industrial investment in the catchment regions, the dedicated freight corridors would mitigate the congestion of a railway network benefiting the common man. The ambitious program of Bharatmala would help develop national road corridors and highways, while Sagarmala would enhance port connectivity, modernization, and port-link industrialization. If Sagarmala is aimed at improving the infrastructure for external trade, equally, it is the poor man's transport too. The Jal Marg Vikas project for capacity augmentation of navigation on national waterways is aimed at smoothing internal trade carried through inland water transport. These initiatives will improve logistics tremendously, reducing the cost of transport and increasing the competitiveness of domestically produced goods. The Udan scheme is providing air connectivity to smaller cities and enabling the common citizens of our country to avail air travel. All these programs are also helping bridge the rural and urban divide. As the world's third largest domestic aviation market, the time is ripe for India to enter into aircraft financing and leasing activities from Indian shores. This is critical to the development of self-reliant aviation industry, creating aspirational jobs in aviation finance, besides leveraging the business opportunities available in India's financial special economic zones, namely International Financial Services Center, the IFSC. Government will implement the essential elements of the regulatory roadmap for making India a hub for such activities. For providing an enabling ecosystem for growth in India of maintenance, repair and overhaul, MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul industry, it is proposed to leverage India's engineering advantage and potential to achieve self-reliance in this vital aviation segment. Government will adopt suitable policy interventions to create a congenial atmosphere for the development of MRO in the country. The new metro rail projects for a total route length of 300 kilometers have been approved during 2018 and 19. Also, during 2019, about 210 kilometers metro lines have been operationalized. With this, 657 kilometers of metro rails network has become operational across the country. 657 kilometers. India's first indigenously developed payment ecosystem for transport based on National Common Mobility Card, NCMC standards, was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in March 2019. This will enable people to pay multiple kinds of transport charges, including metro services and toll tax, across the country. This interoperable transport card runs on RuPay card and would allow the holders to pay for their bus travel, toll taxes, parking charges, retail shopping, and even withdraw money. Phase 2 of the FAME scheme, following approval of the Cabinet, with an outlay of 10,000 crore rupees over a period of 3 years, has commenced from 1st April 2019. The main objective of the scheme is to encourage faster adoption of electric vehicles by way of offering upfront incentive on purchase of electric vehicles, and also by establishing the necessary charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. Only advanced battery and registered e-vehicles will be incentivized under the scheme, with greater emphasis on providing affordable and environment-friendly public transportation options for the common man. The government will carry out a comprehensive restructuring of National Highway Program to ensure that the National Highway Grid of desirable length and capacity is created using financeable model. After completing the phase 1 of Bharatmala, in the second phase, states will be helped to develop state road networks. We need to develop our inland waterways to shift a significant portion of inland cargo movement from road and rail. This government envisions using the rivers for cargo transportation, which will also help to decongest roads and railways. As part of the Jalmarg Vikas project for enhancing the navigational capacity of the Ganga, a more multimodal terminal at Varanasi has become functional in November 2018, and two more such terminals at Sahibganj and Haldia, a navigational lock at Farakka, would be completed in 1920. The movement of cargo volume on Ganga is estimated to increase by nearly 4 times in the next 4 years. This will make movement of freight, passenger cheaper and reduce our import bill. It is estimated that railway infrastructure would need an investment of 50 lakh crores between 2018 to 2030. Given that the capital expenditure outlays of railways are around 1.5 to 1.6 lakh crores per annum, completing even all sanctioned projects would take decades. It is therefore proposed to use public-private partnership to unleash faster development and completion of tracks, rolling stock manufacturing, and also delivery of passenger freight services. To take connectivity infrastructure to the next level, we will build on the successful model in ensuring power connectivity, one nation, one grid. Earlier we spoke about one nation, one card for mobility of common man. Now it is one nation, one grid. That has ensured power availability to states at affordable rates. I propose to make available a blueprint this year for developing gas grids, water grids, highways, and regional airports. So the scaling up that we talked about, which marks the USP of this government, is revealed in each one of these examples. We do it in that scale each time. The recommendations of high-level empowered committee on retirement of old and inefficient plants and addressing low utilization of gas plant capacity due to paucity of natural gas will also be taken up for implementation now. Our government launched Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, UDAY, in 2015, aimed at financial and operational turnaround of discoms. Government is examining the performance of the scheme, and it will further get improved. We will work with the state governments to remove barriers like cross-subsidy surcharges, undesirable duties on open access sales, or captive generation for industrial and other bulk power consumers. Besides these structural reforms, considerable reforms are needed in tariff policy. A package for power sector tariff and structural reforms would soon be announced. It is proposed that several reform measures would be taken up to promote rental housing. Current rental laws are archaic as they do not address the relationship between the lessor and the leasee realistically and fairly. A model tenancy law will also be finalized and circulated to the states. Large public infrastructure can be built on land parcels held by the central ministries and central public sector enterprises all across the country. Through an innovative instrument or innovative instruments such as joint development and concession, public infrastructure and affordable housing will be taken up. For ease of access to credit for MSMEs, Government has introduced providing of loans up to 1 crore rupees for MSMEs within 59 minutes through a dedicated online portal. Under the interest subvention scheme for MSMEs, 350 crores of rupees has been allocated for the year 2019-20 for 2% interest subvention for all GST registered MSMEs on fresh or on incremental loans. On fresh or on incremental loans. Government payments to suppliers and contractors are a major source of cash flow, especially to SMEs and MSMEs. Investment in MSMEs will receive a big boost if these delays in payment are eliminated. Government will create a payment platform for MSMEs to enable filing of bills and payment thereof on the platform itself, thereby cutting down the time and the process itself. Encouraged by the overwhelming response, the Government of India has decided to extend the pension benefit to about 3 crore retail traders and shopkeepers whose annual turnover is less than 1.5 crores under a new scheme, namely Pradhan Mantri Karam Yogi Man Dhan scheme. Enrollment into the scheme will be kept simple, requiring only Aadhaar and a bank account, and the rest will be on self-declaration. We recognize that investment-driven growth requires access to low-cost capital. It is estimated that India requires investments averaging 20 lakh crores of rupees every year. A number of measures are proposed to enhance the sources of capital for infrastructure financing. A Credit Guarantee Enhancement Corporation, for which regulations have been notified by the RBI, will be set up in 2019-20. An action plan to deepen the market for long-term bonds, including for deepening markets for corporate bond repos, credit default swaps, etc., with specific focus on infrastructure sector, will be put in place. It is proposed to permit investments made by FIIs and FPIs in debt securities issued by Infrastructure Debt Fund, non-bank finance companies, the IDS, NBFCs, to be transferred, sold to any domestic investor within specified lock-in period. Corporate debt markets are crucial for the infrastructure sector. Given the need to further deepen bond markets, a number of measures are proposed to be taken up. To deepen the corporate tri-party repo market in corporate debt securities, government will work with regulators, the RBI and the SEBI, to enable stock exchanges to allow AA-rated bonds as collaterals. User-friendliness of trading platforms for corporate bonds will be reviewed, including issues arising out of capping of International Security Identification Number, the ISIN. It's right time to consider increasing minimum public shareholding in the listed companies. I have asked SEBI to consider raising the current threshold of 25% to 35%. As a key source of capital to the Indian economy, it is important to ensure a harmonized and hassle-free investment experience for foreign portfolio investors. Hence, it is proposed to rationalize and streamline the existing Know Your Customer, the KYC norms for FPIs to make it more investor-friendly without compromising the integrity of cross-border capital inflows. It is time to take our capital markets closer to the masses and meet various social welfare objectives related to inclusive growth and financial inclusion. I propose to initiate steps towards creating an electronic fundraising platform, a social stock exchange, under the regulatory ambit of Securities and Exchange Board of India, the SEBI, for listing social enterprises and voluntary organizations. For listing social enterprises and voluntary organizations working for the realization of a social welfare objective so that they can raise capital as equity, debt, or as units like a mutual fund. It is important to get retail investors to invest in treasury bills and securities issued by the government. Efforts made by the Reserve Bank will need to be supplemented with further institutional development using stock exchanges. For this purpose, interoperability of RBI depositories and SEBI depositories would be necessary to bring about seamless transfer of treasury bills and government securities between RBI and depository ledgers, and for enabling this, the government will take up necessary measures in this regard in consultation with RBI and the SEBI. FDI inflows into India have remained robust despite global headwinds. Speaker, sir, global foreign direct investment flows slid by 13% in 2018 to $1.3 1.3 trillion US dollars from 1.5 trillion in the previous year. The third consecutive annual decline according to the UNCTAD's UNCTAD's World Investment Report in 2019. This is India's FDI flows in 2018-19 remained strong. If that was the global picture, India's inflows in 18-19 remained strong at 64.37 billion US dollars, marking a 6% growth over the previous year. I propose to further consolidate, Speaker Sir, the gains in order to make India a more attractive FDI destination. A, the government will examine suggestions of further opening up of FDI in aviation, in media, animation, ABGC, and insurance sectors in consultation with all stakeholders. 100% foreign direct investment will be permitted for insurance intermediaries. Local sourcing norms will be eased for the FDI in single brand retail sector. Single brand retail sector. It's high time India not only gets integrated into global value chain of production of goods and services, but also become part of the global financial system to mobilize global savings, mostly institutionalized in pension, insurance, sovereign wealth funds, and so on. The government is contemplating organizing an annual global investors meet in India using National Infrastructure Investment Fund as the anchor to get all three sets of global players, top industrialists, corporate leaders, top pension, insurance, sovereign wealth funds, top pension, insurance, and sovereign wealth funds, and top digital technology and venture funds also. An important determinant of attracting cross-border investment, Speaker Sir, is availability of investable stock to the foreign portfolio investors. This issue assumes greater significance in view of the gradual shift from stock-targeted investments towards passive investment, whereby funds track global indices composition, of which depends upon available floating stock. Accordingly, I propose to increase the statutory limit for FBI investment in a company from 24% to sectoral foreign investment limit, with option given to the concerned corporates to limit it to a lower threshold. FPIs will be permitted to subscribe to listed debt securities issued by the REITs or the InvITs. Even though India is the world's top remittance recipient, NRI investment in Indian capital markets is comparatively less. With a view to provide NRIs with seamless access to Indian equities, I propose to merge the NRI portfolio investment scheme route with the foreign portfolio investment route. New and innovative financial instruments have been launched in the last 5 years, like Infrastructure Investment Trust, the InvITs which I referred to a minute ago, Real Estate Investment Trust, the REITs which I referred to a minute ago, as well as models like Toll Operate Transfer, the TOT, as part of the Brownfield Asset Modernization strategy for augmenting infrastructure investment. India has had a reasonable success in brownfield asset monetization, and several InvITs and one rate transaction have already been completed. Additionally, the National Highways Authority, NHAI, carried out one TOT transaction as well. The cumulative resources garnered through these instruments and model, Speaker Sir, exceed 24,000 crores of rupees. India has emerged as a major space power with the technology and ability to launch satellites and other space products at globally low-cost level. Time has come to harness this ability commercially. A public sector enterprise, namely New Space India Limited, NSIL, has been incorporated as a new commercial arm of the Department of Space to tap the benefits of the research and development carried out by ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization. The company will spearhead commercialization of various space products, including production of launch vehicles, transfer of technologies, and marketing of space. Sir, I've all the while spoken about the various means through which we can, at a macro level, reaching the $5 trillion target. Now, I would just confine myself to talking about Gramin Bharat, the rural India, the we'll take towards strengthening our economy. Mahatma Gandhi ji had said, the soul of India lives in its villages. This year, even the 150th birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, the soul of India lives in its villages. This year, even as we are marking the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, I submit that our government keeps Antyodaya at the core of all its efforts. At the center of everything that we do, we keep Gaon, Garib और Kisan. मतलब गांव, गरीब और किसान केंद्र बिंदु है हमारे हर एक कार्यक्रम में. Honorable Prime Minister's two mega initiatives of Ujjwala Yojana and Saubhagya Yojana have transformed the lives of every rural family, dramatically improving ease of their living. Household access to clean cooking gas has seen an unprecedented expansion through provision of more than 7 crore LPG connections. All villages and almost 100% households across the country have been provided with electricity. A combination of efficient implementation and enthusiastic adoption has significantly improved access to energy for rural households. By 2022, the 75th year of Indian independence, I would like to assure the nation that every single rural family, except those who are unwilling to take the connection, except, Speaker Sir, it's important to understand, except those who are unwilling to take the connection will have an electricity and a clean cooking facility. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Gramin, aims to achieve the objective of housing for all by 2022. A total of 1.5 crore rural homes have been completed in the last 5 years. In the second phase of PMAY Gramin, during 2019-20 to 2021-22, 1.95 crore houses, 1.95 crore houses are proposed to be provided to the eligible beneficiaries. These houses are also being provided with amenities like toilets, electricity, and LPG connections. With the use of technology, the DBT platform, the Direct Benefit Transfer platform, and technology inputs, average number of days for completion of houses has been reduced from 314 days in 2015 and 16. It took us 314 days, Speaker Sir. Now it is only 114 days. Please allow me to repeat this. if the completion of houses required 314 days in 2015-16, by the time it was 2017-18, it has now come down to only 114 days, and that is why the scale of our achievement is possible. Fishing and fishermen. Fishing and fishermen communities are closely aligned with farming and are crucial to rural India. Through a focused scheme, the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, the Department of Fisheries will establish a robust fisheries management framework. This will address critical gaps in the value chain, including infrastructure modernization, traceability, production, productivity, post-harvest management, and quality control. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana has brought many socio-economic gains in the rural areas. To accelerate the speed of achieving universal connectivity of eligible habitations, the target of connecting the eligible and feasible habitations was advanced from 2022 construction of 130 to 135 kilometers per day in the last 1,000 days. Committed to the agenda of sustainable development, 30,000 kilometers of Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana roads have been built using green technology, waste plastic and cold mix technology, thereby reducing the carbon footprint. With the changing economic scenario, it is important to upgrade roads connecting villages to the rural markets. For this, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana Phase 3 is envisaged to upgrade 1,25,000 kilometers of road length over the next 5 years, with an estimated cost of 80,250 crores of rupees. 1,25,000 kilometers of roads will be upgraded under Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana Phase 3, and the amount estimated for this is 80,250 crores. Considering the fact that majority of people still live in villages and depend on agriculture and traditional industries, the scheme of Fund for Upgradation and Regeneration of Traditional Industries, SFURTI, Spurti is it, aims to set up more common facility centers to facilitate cluster-based development to make the traditional industries more productive, profitable, and capable for generating sustained employment opportunities. The focus sectors are bamboo, honey, and khadi clusters. The SFURTI envisions setting up of 100 new clusters during 2019-20, which should enable 50,000 artisans to join the economic value chain. Further, to improve the technology of such industries, the Scheme for Promotion of Innovation, Rural Industry and Entrepreneurship, ASPIRE, has been consolidated for setting up of livelihood business incubators and technology business incubators. The scheme contemplates to set up 80 livelihood business incubators and 20 technology business incubators in 2019-20 to develop 75,000 skilled entrepreneurs in agro-rural industry sectors. We will invest widely in agricultural infrastructure. Speaker, sir, we will support private entrepreneurship in driving value addition to farmers' produce from the field and from those from allied activities too, like bamboo, like timber from the hedges, and also for generating renewable energy. Annadata kyun urja data bana nahi sakte? अन्नदाता, ऊर्जादाता बनाने के लिए बहुत सारे हमारे प्रोग्राम्स हैं। Daring through cooperatives shall also be encouraged by creating infrastructure for cattle feed manufacturing, milk procurement, processing and marketing. Speaker, sir, I place my appreciation for our farmers who have made India self-sufficient in pulses. दलहन के रेवोल्यूशन जो हमारे किसान ने किया पिछले 1.5 साल में किया है, उसके लिए उनको मैं बधाई देना चाहती हूँ। I am sure they will repeat such a success even in the production of oil seed. तिलहन में भी हम उम्मीद रखते हैं हमारे किसान ऐसे ही सफलता पाएंगे। Our import bill shall be reduced by their seva. We also hope to form 10,000 new farmer producer organizations. We ensure that will ensure economies of scale for farmers over the next 5 years. The government will work with state governments to allow farmers to benefit from e-NAM. The Agricultural Produce Marketing Cooperatives Act should not hamper farmers from getting a fair price for their produce. Ease of doing business and ease of living both should apply to farmers too. And we shall go back to basics on one count. Speaker, sir, I would like to draw your attention. We shall go back to basics on one count. Zero budget farming. Zero budget farming may not be a new thing. That is why I said we'll go back to basics. We need to replicate this innovative model. Some states have already tried somewhat. We need to replicate this innovative model through which, in a few states, farmers are already being trained in this practice. Steps such as this can help in doubling our farmers' income in time for our 75th year of independence. Ensuring India's water security and providing access to safe and adequate drinking water to all Indians is a priority for this government. A major step in this direction has been constitution of the Jal Shakti Mantralaya, integrating the Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Regeneration and the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. This was done by integrating these many ministries and departments. This new Mantralaya will look at the management of our water resources and water supply in an integrated and holistic manner and will work with states to ensure Har Ghar Jal. Har Ghar Jal to all rural households by 2024 under the Jal Jeevan mission. This mission under the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation will focus on integrated demand and supply side management of water at the local level, including creation of local infrastructure for source sustainability like rainwater harvesting, groundwater recharge and management of household wastewater for reuse in agriculture. The Jal Jeevan mission will converge with other central and state government schemes to achieve its objectives of sustainable water supply management across the country. The government has identified 1,592 blocks which are critical and overexploited, spread across 256 districts for the Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Besides using funds available under various schemes, the government will also explore possibility of using additional funds available under the Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, the CAMPA, for this purpose. Speaker, sir, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan has touched the very conscience of the nation, besides bringing enormous health and environmental benefits. This noble scheme, initiated in 2014, has achieved a resounding success. 9.6 crore toilets have been constructed. 9.6 crore toilets have been constructed since October the 2nd, 2014. More than 5.6 lakh villages have become open defecation free. We have to build on this success. We must not only sustain the behavioral change seen in people, but also harness the latest technologies available to transform waste into energy. I propose to expand the Swachh Bharat mission to undertake sustainable solid waste management in every village. Under the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharata Abhiyan, over 2 crore rural Indians, under the Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharata Abhiyan, over 2 crore rural Indians have so far been made digitally literate. To bridge rural-urban digital divide, BharatNet is targeting internet connectivity in local bodies in every panchayat in the country. This will be speeded up with assistance from Universal Service Obligation Fund under the public-private partnership arrangement. Speaker, sir, till now I focused on some specific features in order that our rural India, Gramin Bharat ke liye. Now I will focus on Shahri Bharat, urban India. This government sees the rapid urbanization of India as an opportunity rather than a challenge. We have to make both our cities and villages better using technology. This way, we can help people live closer to their homes, stop migration into cities, provide essential services to all. Under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, urban, over 81 lakh houses with an investment of about 4.83 lakh crores have been sanctioned, of which construction has started in about 47 lakh houses. Over 26 lakh houses have been completed, of which nearly 24 lakh houses have been delivered to the beneficiaries. There is large-scale adoption of new technologies for construction of these houses. Over 13 lakh houses have so far been constructed using these new technologies. More than 95% of our cities also have become ODF, open defecation free. 95% of all cities have become, or they have declared themselves ODF. More than 45,000 public and community toilets across 1,700 cities have been uploaded on Google Maps, covering more than 53% of India's urban population. Almost 1 crore citizens have downloaded the Swachhata app. The 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi is an apt occasion for us to rededicate ourselves to the ideals of the Mahatma. Honorable Prime Minister took the sankalp of achieving Gandhiji's resolve of Swachh Bharat to make India open defecation free by 2nd October 2019. I am very satisfied and I am very happy to report to this august House that this would be achieved by the 2nd of October. To mark this occasion, the Rashtriya Swachhata Kendra will be inaugurated at Gandhi Darshan, Rajghat on 2nd October 2019. A Gandhipedia like encyclopedia on Gandhi. A Gandhipedia is also being developed by National Council for Science Museums to sensitize youth and society at large about positive Gandhian values. Indian Railways and long-distance services do a phenomenal task in cities like Mumbai and smaller cities. Railways will be encouraged to invest more in suburban railways through special purpose vehicle structures like rapid regional transport system proposed on the Delhi-Meerut route. I propose to enhance the metro railway initiatives by encouraging more PPP initiatives and ensuring completion of sanctioned works while supporting transit-oriented development to ensure commercial activity around transit hubs. We are in the process of completing the dedicated freight corridor project that will free up some of the existing railway network for passenger trains. Speaker, sir, allow me now to speak on the youth of India. The government will bring in a new national educational policy to transform India's higher education system to one of the global best education systems. The new policy proposes major changes in both school and higher education, among others, better governance systems, and brings greater focus on research and innovation. We propose to establish a national research foundation to fund, to coordinate, and to promote research in the country. NRF, or the National Research Foundation, will assimilate the research grants being given by various ministries independent of each other. NRF will ensure that the overall research ecosystem in the country is strengthened with focus on identified thrust areas relevant to our national priorities and towards basic science without duplication of effort and expenditure. We would work out a very progressive and research-oriented structure for the NRF itself. The funds available with all ministries will be integrated in NRF. This would be adequately supplemented with additional funds. Massive online open courses through WION initiative have helped bridge the digital divide for disadvantaged section of our student community. To upgrade the quality of teaching, the Global Initiative of Academic Networks, WION, program in higher education was started, aimed at tapping the global pool of scientists and researchers. The imprint or impacting research innovation and technology scheme began as PAN-IIT and IISc joint initiative to develop a roadmap for research to solve major engineering and technology challenges in selected domains needed by the country. Higher educational institutions are becoming the centers of innovation. These initiatives have upgraded the quality of education. There was not a single Indian institution in the top 200 in the World University Rankings 5 years back. I repeat, there was not a single Indian institution in the top 200 in the World University Rankings for 5 years back. Due to the concentrated efforts and concerted efforts by our institutions to boost their standards and also to project their credentials better, we have now 3 institutions, 2 IITs and IISc Bangalore in the top 200 institutional bracket. This is a window open now thanks to all our efforts. We will continue making concerted efforts to improve the performance of our institutions of higher learning. An amount of 400 crores has been provided under the head world-class institutions for the year 2019-20, more than 3 times the revised estimates for the previous year. More than 3 times the revised estimates of the previous year. India has the potential to become a hub of higher education. I therefore propose to start a program, Study in India, that will focus on bringing foreign students to India in our higher educational institutions. The regulatory systems of higher education would be reformed comprehensively to promote greater autonomy and focus on better academic outcomes. A draft legislation for setting up of Higher Education Commission of India would be presented in the year ahead. Khelo India scheme, launched in October 2017, has created awareness of sports as an integral part of wellness throughout the country. The government is committed to expand Khelo India scheme and to provide all necessary financial support. To popularize sports at all levels, a national sports education board for development of sportspersons would be set up under Khelo India scheme. Sir Speaker, this government recognizes and follows the teachings of Lord Bashveshwara. This government recognizes and follows the teachings of Lord Basaveshwara, in particular the principle of Kayaka and Dasoha. Implementing Kayakeva Kailasa, the government enables about 10 million youth to take up industry-relevant skill training through the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. This is helping to create a large pool of skilled manpower with speed and high standards. Demographic trends worldwide show that major economies will face severe labor shortages in the future. To prepare our youth to also take up jobs overseas, we will increase focus on skill sets needed abroad, including language. So lay focus on new age skills like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data, 3D printing, virtual reality, and robotics, which are valued highly both within and outside the country and offer much higher remuneration. Drawing again on Lord Basaveshwara, his principle of Dasoha underlines most things this government does. Give it up for giving up LPG subsidy, or the various pension schemes, or on the principle of sharing through distribution for the wellness of society, which is what Lord Basaveshwara did even earlier in a millennia ago. The government is proposing to streamline multiple labor laws into a set of 4 labor codes. So for the sake of labor welfare, I'd like to repeat this slide. The government is proposing to streamline multiple labor laws into a set of 4 labor codes. Codes. C-O-D-E-S. Codes. This will ensure that process of registration and filing of returns will get standardized and streamlined. With various labor-related definitions getting standardized, it is expected that there shall be less disputes. We propose, again sir, this is an interesting idea, I wish to draw your attention. We propose to start a television program within the DD bouquet of channels exclusively for startups. This shall serve as a platform for promoting startups, discussing issues affecting their growth, matchmaking with venture capitalists, and for funding and tax planning. This channel shall be designed and executed by startups themselves. Later in the speech, I shall deal with taxation matters of the startups. So, Stand Up India scheme has delivered enormous benefits. The country is witnessing emergence of thousands of entrepreneurs, from women and also from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Most of them assisted to set up their own businesses and industry, with capital provided under the Stand Up India scheme. Considering the beneficial results of the scheme and strong demand for its continuance by the SC and ST communities themselves, the scheme would now be continued for the entire period coinciding with the 15th Finance Commission, that is 2020 to 2025. The banks will provide financial assistance for demand-based businesses, including, for example, for acquisition of scavenging machines and robots. Sir Speaker, the Stand Up India scheme has made human dignity and self-esteem to go up. Kaikeva Kailasa, I said earlier, and I repeat, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has enabled SC and ST entrepreneurs in providing bulk LPG transportation contracts to them. In a matter of 2 years, over 300 entrepreneurs have emerged as a result of the Stand Up scheme. Machines and robots have been deployed to do scavenging, which also saved the manual scavengers their dignity. The synthesis between stand-up and start-up, with commercial banks playing the catalyst, has brought this transformational change. Sir, now I shall concentrate a few paragraphs on ease of living. After all, everything that this government does with the principle of minimum government, maximum governance is aimed at getting ordinary citizens' life a bit easier. So the ease of living is a very important principle. This government aims to bring greater ease of living in the lives of its citizens. Digital payments are gaining acceptance everywhere, including by the government. Use of technology is an effective way to ensure this. Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan was launched on 5th March 2019 by the Honorable Prime Minister in Ahmedabad. The scheme aims at providing 3,000 rupees per month as pension on attaining the age of 60 to crores of workers in unorganized and informal sectors. About 30 lakh workers have already joined the scheme. For good quality of life and ease of living, maintaining a cleaner environment and ensuring sustainable energy use is absolutely vital. A program of mass scaling up of LED bulbs for widespread distribution at household level was taken up, resulting into massive replacement of incandescent bulbs and CFLs in the country. Approximately 35 crore LED bulbs have been distributed under the Ujala Yojana, leading to a cost saving, and this is very impressive. I request through you, respected Speaker, that all members present here listen to what cost saving has emerged because of the LED bulbs. Approximately 35 crore LED bulbs have been distributed under the Ujala Yojana, leading to a cost saving of 18,341 crores. And this 18,341 crores annually, every year, because of LED, this is what the country is saving. It is going to be free of incandescent, India is going to be free of incandescent bulbs, and CFL use has already become minuscule. We will use the approach of mission LED bulb method to promote the use of solar stoves and battery chargers in the country. to make railway travel a pleasant and satisfying experience to the common citizen, again, ease of living, we will launch a massive program of railway station modernization this year. Railway station modernization will be launched this year. Honorable Speaker, sir, I draw the attention to the women of India. Nari to Narayani. We believe, obviously this country's tradition has been Nari to Narayani. Swami Vivekananda, in a letter to Swami Ramakrishnananda, had said, "There's no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved." I repeat, there is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. It is not possible. It is not possible for a bird to fly on one wing. Swami Vivekananda's words. This government believes that we can make progress with greater women's participation. In India's growth story, sir, I would like to draw your attention. In India's growth story, particularly in the rural economy, Gramin Arthvyavastha mein, the role of women is a very sweet story. Gramin Arthvyavastha mein Mahila ki Bhagidari एकदम एक सुनहरा कहानी है. This government wishes to encourage and facilitate the role of women. Gender analysis of the budget aimed at examining the budgetary allocation through a gender lens has been in place for over a decade. I propose to form a broad-based committee with government and private stakeholders to evaluate and suggest action for moving forward. There is no segment of human life where the contribution of women is not significant. There is no segment where the contribution of women is not significant. This government firmly believes that the socio-economic transformation that is taking place, particularly in the last decade, India's women's role and leadership is distinct. The recent elections have shown record turnout of women voters at par with men. Record turnout of women voters at par with men. We also have a record number of 78 women MPs here in this House. This reinforces our approach of going beyond just women-centric policy. I repeat, this reinforces our approach of going beyond just women-centric policy making to building women-led initiatives and movements. This government, Speaker Sir, has supported and encouraged women entrepreneurship through various schemes such as Mudra, Stand Up India, self-help group support, and so on. In order to further encourage women enterprises, I propose to expand the Women SHG Interest Subvention Program to all districts in India. Furthermore, for every verified woman SHG member having a Jan Dhan bank account, for every verified woman SHG member having a Jan Dhan account, an overdraft of 5,000 shall be allowed. Again, one woman in every SHG, which is spread all across the country, one woman in every SHG will also be made eligible for a loan up to 1 lakh under the Mudra scheme. Speaker, sir, at the beginning I did tell you about India's soft power. India's soft power, which is the next section I'll concentrate on. India's soft power is appreciated in so many different ways. Some simple examples, sir. In the last 3 years, on the International Yoga Day, yoga has been practiced in large numbers in 192 countries around the world. Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Janto Tene Kahiye, was sung by the respective lead artists from over 40 countries. The annual Bharat Ko Jano quiz competition is sought after as an event to participate by not only NRIs, non-resident Indians, but also several foreigners themselves. I propose to consider issuing Aadhaar card for non-resident Indians with Indian passports after their arrival in India without waiting for 180 days. I repeat it. I propose to consider issuing Aadhaar cards for non-resident Indians with Indian passports after their arrival in India without waiting for the mandatory 180 days, without waiting the issue. I propose to launch a mission which will integrate our traditional artisans and their creative products with global markets. Wherever necessary, we shall obtain patents for them and the geographical indicators, GI, for them. I wish to say this in Hindi for the larger audience of traditional artisans. इस उद्देश्य से मैं इस गरिमामय प्रांगण से पहली बार यह घोषणा करती हूं कि हम भारत के सृजनात्मक उद्योगों को अर्थव्यवस्था से जोड़कर जहां आवश्यक है बौद्धिक संपदा अधिकारों से संरक्षित करके राष्ट्रीय और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार तक पहुंचाने की मुहिम प्रारंभ करेंगे। To give further impetus to India's growing influence and leadership in the international community, government decided to open Indian embassies and high commissions abroad in countries where India does not have a resident diplomatic mission as yet. Accordingly, in March 2018, government approved opening of 18 new Indian diplomatic missions in Africa. 5 embassies have already been opened in Rwanda, Djibouti, Equatorial Guinea, Republic of Guinea, and Burkina Faso in the year 2018-19. Government intends to open another 4 embassies, new ones, in the year 2019-20. This will not only increase the footprint of India's overseas presence, but also enable us to provide better and more accessible public services, especially to the local Indian communities in these countries. In line with our ancient wisdom, India has always pursued a policy of economic cooperation with countries through bilateral and regional coordination. Indian Development Assistance Scheme, IDEAS, provides concessional financing for projects and contributes to infrastructure development and capacity building in the recipient developing countries. Mindful of our position as the 6th largest economy, we will look at alternative development models which include private sector equity, multilateral financing, contributions from corporates, non-residents, and so on. I propose to revamp the IDEA scheme during the current financial year. The government is developing 17 iconic tourism sites into world-class tourist destinations and to serve as a model to other tourism sites. The iconic tourism sites would enhance visitor experience, which would lead to increased visits of both domestic and international tourists at these destinations. With the objective of preserving rich tribal heritage, a digital repository is developed where documents of folk songs, photos and videos regarding their evolution, place of origin, lifestyle, architecture, education levels, skill sets, traditional art, folk dances, and other anthropological details of the tribes in India will be stored. The repository will further be enriched and strengthened as we go along. Speaker, sir, now I come to saying what we propose about the banking and the financial sector. Financial gains from cleaning of the banking system are now amply visible. NPAs, meaning non-performing assets, of commercial banks have reduced by over 1 lakh crore over the last year. Record recovery of over 4 lakh crore due to IBC and other measures has been effected in the last 4 years. Provision coverage ratio is now at its highest in 7 years, and domestic credit growth has risen by 13.8%. Government has smoothly carried out consolidation, reducing the number of public sector banks by 8. Government has smoothly carried out consolidation, reducing the number of public sector banks by 8. At the same time, as many as 6 public sector banks have been enabled to come out of prompt corrective action framework. We have enabled 6 public sector banks to come out of that situation. Having addressed the legacy issues, public sector banks are now proposed to be further provided 70,000 crores of rupees capital to boost credit for a strong impetus to the economy. 70,000 crores of rupees will be provided in order that capital will be boosted so that credit can be improved. To further improve ease of living, they will leverage technology, offering online personal loans, doorstep banking, and enabling customers of one public sector bank to access services across all public sector banks, and so on. In addition, government will initiate steps to empower account holders to remedy the current situation in which they do not have control over deposits of cash by others into their accounts. There is an issue now. Unknowing to them, there are money being deposited into accounts, and that is creating a lot of problems for customers. So we will be addressing that also. We will initiate steps to address that problem. Reforms will also be undertaken to strengthen governance in public sector banks. Non-banking financial companies are playing an extremely important role in sustaining consumption demand as well as capital formation in small and medium industrial segment. NBFCs that are fundamentally sound should continue to get funding from banks and mutual funds without being unduly risk-averse. For purchase of high-rated pooled assets of financially sound NBFCs amounting to a total of 1 lakh crore rupees during the current financial year, government will provide one-time 6 months partial credit guarantee to public sector banks for the first loss of up to 10%. I shall read this again. For the purchase of high-rated pooled assets of financially sound NBFCs amounting to a total of 1 lakh crores of rupees during the current financial year, government will provide one-time 6 months partial credit guarantee to public sector banks for first loss up to 10%. Further, Reserve Bank of India is the regulator of the NBFCs. However, RBI has limited regulatory authority over NBFCs. Appropriate proposals for strengthening the regulatory authority of RBI over NBFCs are being placed in the finance bill. NBFCs which do public placement of debt have to maintain a debenture redemption reserve. And in addition, a special reserve as required by RBI has also to be maintained. To allow NBFCs to raise funds in public issues, the requirement of creating a DRR, that is a debenture redemption reserve, which is currently applicable for only public issues as private placements are exempt, this will be done away with. To bring more participants, especially NBFCs, not registered as NBFCs factor, on the TREDS platform, amendment in the Factoring Regulation Act 2011 is necessary, and steps will be taken to allow all NBFCs to directly participate on the TREDS platform. Efficient and conducive regulation of the housing sector is extremely important in our context. The National Housing Bank, besides being a refinancer and a lender, is also the regulator of the housing finance sector. This gives a somewhat conflicting and difficult mandate to the NHB. I am proposing to return the regulation authority over the housing finance sector from the NHB, National Housing Board, to the RBI. I am proposing to return the regulation authority over the housing finance sector from NHB to the RBI. Necessary proposals have been placed in the finance bill even for that. Government has announced its intention to invest 100 lakh crores in infrastructure over the next 5 years. 100 lakh crores for infrastructure over the next 5 years. To this end, it is proposed to set up an expert committee to study the current situation relating to long-term finance and our past experience with development finance institutions, and this committee shall recommend the structure and required flow of funds through development finance institutions. The situation will be reviewed by them, and they will suggest measures. Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority, PFRDA, implements and regulates the National Pension System, the NPS, and Atal Pension Yojana through various intermediaries, including, inter alia, the NPS Trust, keeping in view the wider interest of the subscribers and to maintain arm's-length relationship of the NPS Trust with PFRDA. Steps will be taken to separate the NPS Trust from PFRDA with appropriate organizational structure. To facilitate onshoring of international insurance transactions and to enable opening of branches by foreign reinsurers in the International Financial Service Center, it is proposed to reduce net owned fund requirement from 5,000 crores to 1,000 crores, 1,000 crores. I'll repeat that sentence, sir. To facilitate onshoring of international insurance transactions and to enable opening of branches by foreign reinsurers in the International Financial Services Center, it is proposed to reduce net owned fund requirement from 5,000 crores to 1,000 crores. Government has been following the policy of disinvestment in non-financial public sector undertakings, maintaining government stake not to go below 51%. Government is considering, in case where the undertaking is still to be retained in government control, to go below 51% to an appropriate level on case-to-case basis. Government has also decided to modify present policy of retaining 51% government stake to retaining 51% stake inclusive of the stake of government-controlled institutions. Sir Speaker, in order to improve the capital flows into the Indian economy, it is important to align domestic corporate systems and practices with global ones. It is also appreciated that global finance movement in equity uses certain parameters to evaluate the stocks in which they choose to invest. The government intends to further encourage retail participation in CPSEs, which of late has shown very encouraging upward trend. In order to provide additional investment space, the government would realign its holding in CPSEs, including banks, to permit greater availability of its shares and to improve depth of its market. Strategic disinvestment of select CPSEs would continue to remain a priority of this government. In view of current macroeconomic parameters, government would not only reinitiate the process of strategic disinvestment of Air India, but would offer more CPSEs for strategic participation by the private sector. I repeat this sentence: strategic disinvestment of select CPSEs would continue to remain a priority for this government. In view of current macroeconomic parameters, government would not only reinitiate the process of strategic disinvestment of Air India, but also would offer more CPSEs for strategic participation by the private sector. Government is setting an enhanced target of rupees 1,05,000 crore of disinvestment receipts for the financial year 2019-20. The government will undertake strategic sale of PSUs. The government will also continue to do consolidation of PSUs in the non-financial space as well. Sir, ETFs have proved to be an important investment opportunity for retail investors and has turned out to be a good instrument of Government of India's disinvestment program. To expand this further, government will offer an investment option in ETFs on the line of equity-linked savings scheme, which is ELSS. This would encourage long-term investments in CPSEs. For bringing better public ownership of the PSUs and also bring greater commercial and market orientation of the listed PSUs, the government will take all necessary steps to meet public shareholding norms of 25% for all listed PSUs and raise the foreign shareholding limits to maximum permissible sector limits for all PSUs, companies which are part of emerging market index. Sir, the Indian sovereign debt, external debt, India's sovereign external debt to GDP is among the lowest globally at less than 5%. Honorable Speaker, sir, this is a very important indicator for India. I am repeating the line. India's sovereign external debt to GDP is among the lowest globally at less than 5%. The government will start raising a part of its gross borrowing program in external markets in external currencies. This will also have beneficial impact on demand situation for the government securities in domestic market. A new series of coins, sir, a new series of coins of 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 5 rupees, 10 rupees and 20 rupees, easily identifiable to the visually impaired also, were released by the government minister, by the Honorable Prime Minister on 7th March 2019. These new coins will be made available for public use shortly. Sir, in the first 50 years after independence, we emphasized on rights. So I draw your attention to this line, which marks the end of part A of my speech. In the first 50 years after independence, we emphasized on rights. Marking 75 years of our independence, we should place emphasis on our duty towards India. Place emphasis on our duty towards India without undermining our rights. Thinkers all over the world have supported the argument that in performing one's duty, protection of one's rights is inherent. In performing one's duty, the protection of one's right is inherent in it. For the bright future of India, when again in 2022 we will remember our freedom fighters, we should dedicate ourselves to the service of the nation. So now I move to part B, which is something of great interest for all of us, taxation related. Honorable Speaker, sir, I see a lot of members sitting up. Mr. Speaker, sir, I begin by thanking our taxpayers who, as responsible citizens, perform their duty by paying their taxes. It is because of their valuable contribution that our government is able to work for our collective dream of inclusive and all-round development of our nation. I place my appreciation to the honest taxpayer of India. At this juncture, sir, I find wisdom in a line from Purananuru, which is a Sangam time Tamil literature piece. A Tamil Sangam era work, and this is done by Pisirandayar, yes. The verse, Yanai Pugunda Nilam, a land into which elephant gets in. Yanai Pugunda Nilam. This was sung as an advice to the king, a Pandyan king, Pandyan Aruvudai Nambi. The king is Pandyan Aruvudai Nambi, and Pisirandayar gives this advice to him. It's a long verse. I'm only picking up the first line, some line from the middle, and the end. Kai nel aruthu kavalang koline, Kai nel aruthu kavalang koline, Arivudai vendan neriyarinde koline, Arivudai vendan neriyarinde koline, Parivu taba edukkum pindam natchin, Parivu taba edukkum pindam natchin, Yanai pukka pulam pol, Yanai pukka pulam pola, Thanum unnan ulagamum kedume. Meaning, a few mounds of rice, just a few mounds of rice from paddy that is harvested from a small piece of land would be sufficient for the elephant. For an elephant, just a few mounds of rice cooked from paddy which is taken from a small piece of land will be sufficient. But what if the elephant itself enters into the field and starts eating? It would eat far lesser than what it will trample with its foot. I hope the meaning is clear. So, the advice given to Pandyan Arivudai Nambi is a valuable advice that this government appreciates. An elephant, if it is given mounds of rice, here I would refer to taxation, will be quite happy. It doesn't have to enter into the field and trample to eat the food. So we don't intend to trample anybody. Sir, in direct taxes, therefore, In direct taxes, therefore, sir, Mr. Speaker, due to a slew of efforts taken by our government, the direct tax revenue has significantly increased over the past couple of years. It has increased by over 78% from 6.38 lakh crores in financial year 2013-14 to around 11.37 lakh crores in financial year 2018. From 6.38 lakh crores to 11.37 lakh crores between 13-14 and 18-19. It is now growing at double-digit rate every year. Let me recall, sir, and reiterate this government's effort over the past 5 years to alleviate the tax burden on small and medium income earners. This includes self-employed as well as small traders, salary earners, and senior citizens. Only when their annual taxable income exceeds 5 lakhs, only when their annual taxable income exceeds 5 lakhs, they are required to pay any income tax. The details of our efforts and achievements on this front during the past few years are given in the annexure to the speech. I am not going into the details of it. Speaker, sir, my tax proposals will aim to stimulate growth, incentivize affordable housing, and encourage startups by releasing the entrepreneurial spirit. It will also be geared towards promoting digital economy. I aim to simplify tax administration and bring greater transparency. So far as corporate tax is concerned, we continue with phased reduction in rates. Currently, a lower rate of 25% is only applicable to companies having annual turnover up to 250 crores. Currently, the lower rate of 25% is only applicable to companies having annual turnover of up to 250 crores. I propose to widen this to include all companies having an annual turnover of up to 400 crores. This will cover 99.3% of all the companies. Only 0.7% of companies will remain outside of this rate. So in order to boost economic growth and make in India, the government will launch a scheme to invite global companies through a transparent competitive bidding to set up mega manufacturing plants in sunrise and advanced technology areas such as semiconductor fabrication, solar photovoltaic cells, lithium storage batteries, solar electric charging infrastructure, computer servers, laptops, etc., and provide them investment-linked income tax exemptions under 35AD of the Income Tax Act and other indirect tax benefits. Sir, on electric vehicles. Considering our large consumer base, we aim to leapfrog and envision India as a global hub of manufacturing of electric vehicles. A global hub of manufacturing electric vehicles. Inclusion of solar storage batteries and charging infrastructure in the above scheme will boost our efforts. Government has already moved the GST Council to lower the GST rate on electric vehicles from 12 to 5%. Also, to make electric vehicle affordable to consumers, our government will provide additional income tax deduction of 1.5 lakhs of rupees on the interest paid on loans taken to purchase electric vehicles. What does this mean? This amounts to a benefit of 2.5 lakh crores over the loan period to the taxpayer who takes loans to purchase electric vehicles. So by the time the entire period of the loan ends, for you having taken the loan for buying an electric vehicle, you would benefit to the level of 2.5 lakh rupees because of this income tax deduction which is being brought in for encouraging purchase of electric vehicles. So startups, as I said when I was talking about the youth of this country, startups require, and we have been consistently providing them all the encouragement. Startups in India are taking firm roots and their continued growth needs to be encouraged. To resolve the so-called angel tax issue, I'm sure a lot of members are concerned on this issue. To resolve the so-called angel tax issue, the startups and their investors who file requisite declarations and provide information in their returns will not be subjected to any kind of scrutiny in respect of valuation of share premiums. The issue of establishing identity of the investor and source of his funds will be resolved by putting in place a mechanism of e-verification, so there's no man-to-man interface there. With this, funds raised by startups will not require, the funds raised by startups will not require any kind of scrutiny from the income tax department. In addition, special administrative arrangements shall be made by the Central Board of Direct Taxes for pending assessments of startups and redressal of their grievances. It will be ensured that no inquiry or verification in such cases be carried out by the assessing officer without obtaining approval of his supervisory office. So the element of discretion with which startups were suffering has been removed. So without obtaining the approval of his supervisory officer, an assessing officer shall not worry the assessee. At present, startups are not required to justify fair market value of their shares issued to certain investors, including Category 1 alternative investment funds. I propose to extend this benefit to Category 2 alternative investment funds also. At the moment, it's available for AIF Category 1. Now I expand this to include Category 2 AIFs also. Therefore, valuation of shares issued to these funds shall be beyond the scope of income tax scrutiny. Again, you get out of income tax scrutiny when that has been done. I also propose to relax some of the conditions for carry forward and set off losses in the case of startups. I also propose to extend the period of exemption of capital gains arising from sale of residential house for investment in startups up to 31/3/2021 and relax certain other conditions of this exemption. So affordable housing, which is an aim of this government. For realization of the goal of housing for all and affordable housing, a tax holiday has already been provided on the profits earned by developers of affordable housing. Also, interest paid on housing loans is allowed as a deduction to the extent of 2 lakhs in respect of self-occupied property. In order to provide a further impetus, I propose to allow an additional deduction of up to 1,50,000 rupees for interest paid on loans borrowed up to 31st March 2020, next year, for purchase up to 3.5 lakhs of rupees. This will translate into benefit of 7 lakh of rupees to the middle class home buyers over their loan period of 15 years. Just as we said about the electric cars, now we are saying the tax deduction provision that we are coming in now with will enable home buyers of the affordable home category that in the period of 15 years, when your loan, home loan runs, the net gain would be 7 lakh of rupees. this will immediately benefit a lot of middle class. So on the NBFCs, a lot of discussion happens today about NBFCs. Non-banking financial companies play an increasingly important role in India's financial system. With enhanced levels of regulation they are subjected to by the Reserve Bank of India, there is a need to provide greater parity in their tax treatments vis-à-vis scheduled banks. Currently, interest on certain bad or doubtful debts made by scheduled banks and other financial institutions is allowed to be offered to tax in the year in which this interest is actually received. I propose to extend this facility to deposit-taking as well as systematically important non-deposit-taking NBFCs also. So the International Financial Services Center, the GIFT City, series of measures have already been taken in the past by this government. With a view to incentivizing the IFSC, I propose to provide several direct tax incentives to an IFSC, including 100% profit-linked deduction under Section 80 LA in any 10-year block within a 15-year period, exemption from dividend distribution tax from current and accumulated income to companies and mutual funds, exemption on capital gain to Category 3 AIF, and interest payment on loan taken from non-residents. So, securities transaction tax. I propose to give relief in levy of securities transaction tax by restricting it only to the difference between the settlement and the strike price in case of exercise of option. Simplification and ease of living. India's ease of doing business ranking under the category of paying taxes showed a significant jump from 172 in 2017 to 121 in the year 2019. From 172, we have come to 121, a drastic improvement. I now propose to implement a series of measures that will leverage technology to make compliance easier for the taxpayer. Interchangeability of PAN and Aadhaar. Mr. Speaker, sir, more than 120 crore Indians now have Aadhaar card. Therefore, for ease and convenience of taxpayers, I propose to make PAN and Aadhaar interchangeable and allow those who do not have PAN card to file income tax returns by simply quoting their Aadhaar number, and also use it wherever they are required to quote the PAN. So everywhere where you are required to quote the PAN, instead you can just do Aadhaar, and even if you don't have a PAN, there is no problem. So pre-filling of income tax returns. Pre-filled tax returns will be made available to taxpayers, which will contain details of salary income, capital gains from securities, bank interest and dividends, etc., and tax deductions also. Information regarding these incomes will be collected from the concerned sources such as banks, stock exchanges, mutual funds, EPFO, state registration departments, and so on. This will not only significantly reduce the time taken to file tax return, but will also encourage accuracy of reporting of income tax. So, faceless e-assessment. This is a very important thing about which there's been a lot of discussion. Assessees should not face any kind of harassment. The existing system of scrutiny assessments in the income tax department involves a high level of personal interaction between the taxpayer and the department, which leads to certain undesirable practices and on the part of the tax officials. To eliminate such instances and to give shape to the vision of Honorable Prime Minister, a scheme of faceless assessment in electronic mode involving no human interface is being launched this year in a phased manner. To start with, such e-assessments shall be carried out in cases requiring verification of certain specified transactions or discrepancies. Cases selected for scrutiny shall be allocated to assessment units in a random manner, and notices shall be issued electronically only by a central cell without disclosing the name, designation, or location of the assessing officer. The central cell shall be the single point of contact between the taxpayer and the department. This new scheme of assessment will represent a paradigm shift in the functioning of the income tax department. So on digital payments, our government has taken a number of initiatives in the recent past for the promotion of digital payments and less cash economy. To promote digital payments further, I propose to take a slew of measures to discourage the practice of making business payments in cash. To discourage the practice of making business payments in cash, I propose to levy TDS, tax deduction at source, of 2% on cash withdrawal exceeding 1 crore in a year from a bank account. I repeat this. To discourage the practice of making business payments in cash, I propose to levy TDS of 2% on cash withdrawal exceeding 1 crore in a year from a bank account. Further, there are low-cost digital modes of payment such as BHIM UPI, UPI QR code, Aadhaar Pay, certain debit cards, NEFT, RTGS, etc., which can be used to promote less cash economy. I therefore propose that the business establishments with annual turnover of more than 50 crores shall offer such low-cost digital modes of payment to their customers, and no charges or merchant discount rates shall be imposed on customers as well as the merchants. No charges or merchant discount rates shall be imposed on customers as well as the merchants. RBI and banks will absorb these costs from the savings that will accrue to them on account of handling less cash as people move to these digital modes of payment. Necessary amendments are being made in the Income Tax Act and the Payments and Settlement System Act of 2007 to give effect to these provisions. So now about the revenue mobilization. I'm sure it's equally concerning for all of us. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I have started earlier, we have taken several measures in the past to alleviate the tax burden on small and medium income earners, as those having annual income up to 5 lakhs are not required to pay any income tax. We are thankful to the taxpayers who play a major role in nation building by paying their taxes. However, in view of the rising income levels, those in the highest income brackets need to contribute more to the nation's development. I therefore propose to enhance the surcharge on individuals having taxable income from 2 crore to 5 crores and 5 crore and above, so that effective tax rates for these two categories will increase by around 3% and 7% respectively. So the other measures, I also propose to simplify the tax law to reduce genuine hardships being caused to taxpayers, which include enhancing threshold of tax for launching prosecution for non-filing of returns, and exempting appropriate class of persons from the anti-abuse provision of Section 50CA and Section 56 of the Income Tax Act. So the indirect taxes. Now coming to indirect taxes, sir. we are aware that the landscape has changed significantly with the implementation of the GST. In every sense, this has been a monumental reform. In every sense, this has been a monumental reform, center and states coming together and agreeing to pool in their sovereign power of taxation for common good of the country was unprecedented. 17 taxes and 13 cesses became one tax. Multitude of rates instantly became 4. Almost all commodities saw rate reduction. Tens of returns were replaced by just one. Taxpayers' interface with tax departments got reduced. Border checks got reduced and eliminated in many cases. Goods started moving freely across states, which saved time and energy. A truck started doing two trips in the same time in which it was doing one. Thus, dream of one nation, one tax, one market was realized. The GST Council deserves all the credit for this. Sir, in the initial phase, GST witnessed certain teething problems. This was natural considering the scale of the reform. However, the Council, the Centre and the states proactively worked to resolve these issues. GST rates have also been reduced significantly, where relief of about 92,000 crores per year has been given. We should not lose sight of this fact when judging the performance of the GST. The details are given in the annexure. We are further simplifying the GST processes. A simplified single monthly return is being rolled out. Taxpayer having annual turnover of less than 5 crore shall file only quarterly returns. Free accounting software for return preparation has been made available to small businesses. A fully automated GST refund module shall be implemented. Multiple tax ledgers for a taxpayer shall be replaced by just one. It's also proposed to move an electronic invoice system wherein invoice details will be captured in a central system at the time of issuance. This will eventually be used to pre-fill a taxpayer's return. There will be no need for a separate e-way bill. Its rollout would begin from January 2020. Electronic invoice system will significantly reduce the compliance burden. Sir, on the customs side, my proposals are driven with the objective of securing our borders, achieving higher domestic value addition through Make in India, reducing import dependence, protection to MSME, and promoting clean energy, curbing non-essential imports, and correcting inversions. Defense has an immediate requirement of modernization and upgradation. This is a national priority. For this purpose, import of defense equipment that are not being manufactured in India are being exempted from the basic customs duty. Make in India is a cherished goal. In order to provide domestic industry a level playing field, basic customs duty is being increased on items such as cashew kernels, PVC, vinyl flooring, tiles, metal fittings, mountings for furniture, auto parts, certain kinds of synthetic rubber, marble slabs, optical fiber cable, CCTV camera, IP camera, digital and network video recorders, and so on. Also, exemptions from customs duty on certain electronic items which are now being manufactured in India are being withdrawn. Further, end-use based exemptions on palm stearin, fatty oils, and exemptions to various kinds of papers are also being withdrawn. To encourage domestic publishing and printing industry, 5% customs duty is being imposed on imported books. To further promote domestic manufacturing, customs duty reductions are being proposed on certain raw materials and capital goods. These include certain inputs of CRGO sheets, amorphous alloy ribbon, ethylene dichloride, propylene oxide, cobalt matte, naphtha, wool fibers, inputs for manufacture of artificial kidney and disposable sterilized dialyzer, and fuels for nuclear power plants. To further incentivize e-mobility, customs duty is being exempted on certain parts of electric vehicles. Customs duty is also being exempted on capital goods required for manufacture of specified electronic goods. So the export duty is being rationalized on raw and finished leather to provide relief to this sector. Crude prices have softened from their highs. This gives me room to review excise duty and cess on petrol and diesel. I propose to increase special additional excise duty and road and infrastructure cess, each one by ₹1 a litre on petrol and diesel. It is also proposed to increase custom duty on gold and other precious metals from 10% to 12.5%. It is also proposed to increase custom duty on gold and other precious metals from 10 to 12.5%. Tobacco products and crude attract national calamity and contingent duty. In certain cases, this levy has been contested on the ground that there is no basic excise duty on these items. To address this issue, a nominal basic excise duty is being imposed. Sir, I am also proposing few amendments to the Customs Act. Recent trends reveal that certain bogus entities are resorting to unfair practices to avail undue concessions and export incentives. While we have intensified our efforts against such nefarious activities, provisions are being incorporated in the Act for enhanced penalty and prosecution for such offences. Further misuse of duty-free scrips and drawback facility involving more than 50 lakh of rupees will be a cognizable and non-bailable offence. GST has completed 2 years. An area that concerns me is that we have huge pending litigations from pre-GST regime. More than 3.75 lakh crores of rupees is being blocked in litigations and service tax and excise. There is a need to unload this baggage and allow businesses to move on. I therefore propose a legacy dispute resolution scheme, that will allow quick closure of these litigations. I would urge the trade and business to avail this opportunity and be free from legacy litigations. The details of my tax proposals are given in the annexure. Sir Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity, and with these words, I commend the budget to this august House. Thank you.
To Srimati Nirmala Sitaram, Manya Vitt Mantri ji.
I just would like to mention, although I have commended the budget, I just would like to mention, I have not mentioned specific allocations for the scheme and programs. I have not mentioned specific allocations for schemes and programs. All these details are available in the budget documents as much as my speech's annexure. I also thank and take this opportunity for the response that we've received for the crowdsourcing of ideas for the budget. Immense suggestions from common citizens reached us. We have benefited from the crowdsourcing. The one last mention, which is more for the curiosity's sake, the fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit this year is 3.3%, brought down from 3.4%. Thank you.
आइटम नंबर 2, श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण, माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी.
Don't have the papers with me. Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table the statements regarding medium-term fiscal policy, fiscal policy statement, and the macroeconomic framework statement under Section 3, subsection 1 of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management FRBM Act 2003.
Item number 3.
Sir, with your permission again, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance number 2 Bill 2019.
प्रश्न ये है कि वित्त विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए. जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य इसके विरोध में ना कहें. मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में हुआ है. हाँ वालों के पक्ष में अनुमति प्रदान की जाती है. माननीय मंत्री जी, अब विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करें.
Sir, I now introduce the bill.
माननीय सदस्यों, मैं इस सभा की ओर से देश की पहली पूर्णकालिक महिला वित्त मंत्री जी को बजट पेश करने के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं. और मैं सभी माननीय सदस्यों को भी 2 घंटे 15 मिनट तक आपने जिस शांतिपूर्ण ढंग से सरकार के पहले बजट को सुना, उसके लिए भी आपको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं. सभा की कार्रवाई सोमवार दिनांक 8 जुलाई 2019 को सुबह 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है.
2 hours 15 minutes. That's how long it took Nirmala Sitharaman to present the first budget of the second term of the Modi government. A lot of provisions, a lot of new ideas. She's thanked the people of India. She's called it crowdsourcing of ideas, which has gone into the making of this budget. And we will discuss the provisions, the hits and misses.
In fact, Palki, she has actually closed into the record held by Jaswant Singh in 2003. He read his speech for 2 hours 13 minutes. That record was followed by Arun Jaitley's speech of 2014, which he read for 2 hours 10 minutes. Now, my idea is that she has read this speech for 2 hours and 9 minutes, making BJP in first, second, third position when it comes to the longest speeches. But just as a factoid, the longest speech was given by Dr. Manmohan Singh in 1991, which was 18,000 words and 650, and the shortest again by another congressman, 77, which was only 800 words, and that was during emergency.
And the first full-fledged woman finance minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, presenting her maiden budget in Parliament today and coming up with some very, very interesting ideas that we will discuss in due course here. We are also looking at how the markets are performing and what are the focus areas for this government. Agriculture, notably, was one of the focus areas. The second was infrastructure. Let's go straight to my colleague, Sumit Chaturvedi, who is standing by with all the numbers. Sumit, the first reactions come from India Inc. How are they responding to Nirmala Sitharaman's proposals?
Well, Palki, so far it's balanced because on one side they have taken away from a number of sections. Some things will become costlier for Indian consumers. Let's say gold jewelry will become costlier. Auto parts, because of which some automobiles can become costlier. Other things will become costlier, but on the other hand, there's big relief on the side of digital payments, on the side of housing infrastructure. So this budget is being seen as taken away some things away from consumers and giving to some other consumers. Meanwhile, some FDI, which they propose to open in aviation, media, insurance, this can give boost to these sectors, which can create jobs further going forward. And if we talk about other sectors, some sectors are really been clearly not touched upon. But infrastructure is a big thing, where 1 lakh crore rupees will be invested over the next 5 years. That's a big push coming for road, highways and all these infra services. Banking sector has been given 70,000 crore rupees boost to the whole banking sector, which is through recapitalization. So all these sectors have been given for consumers like you and me. Clearly, some things will become costlier like every budget, and some things will become cheaper like every budget. Depends on what you and me want to buy. But yes, one thing is electric electric vehicle, that segment will get a lot of boost because now we will get income tax deduction. Let's talk about the markets now. We can see across the board, this is mixed reaction coming from budget, but overall markets have slipped. They have been slipping from the last 2 hours since the announcements came. And now Sensex and Nifty, we have seen Sensex down by around 220 points at this moment, and Nifty is also down. Clearly, markets are not enthused by this budget because there's no clarity on fiscal deficit, because the target is 3.4% and markets expected that to be tightened further. The fiscal deficit should have been tightened further. That's what markets expected. Though there is some relief on securities and transaction tax, STT, but that has not enthused markets so far. Even bank recapitalization has not enthused markets so far. So clearly they were expecting a lot. Last interim budget in this year only we were talking, and that time markets were touching record highs. This time not a big thumbs up from the market side. But yes, it looks like it's a balanced budget, taking from some people and giving to some other people with special focus on certain sectors like digital payments, like infrastructure, housing, and even electric vehicles. Yesterday, even in the economic survey, government had outlined a policy for making India a Detroit for electric vehicles. So clearly going by that, tax deduction has been given for buying electric vehicles. That will give a big boost to them. On the other side, import duties have been raised on a number of goods, including gold, because India is the largest importer of gold in the world. This will lead to some relief on the gold import part. CCTV cameras, PVC pipes, other things, they have been really made costlier, but some cheap things have been made cheaper. As far as income tax is concerned, some relief for individual income tax payers, but for high taxpayers between 3 to 5 crore rupees, surcharge has been high, and 1 rupee cess additional petrol diesel. Back to you, Palki.
Right. Sumit, thanks very much for bringing us those numbers. And a balanced budget to me sounds like a good budget, but we have a panel of experts here to discuss what they make of this. Let me introduce our panelists. Ashok Jha, former Finance Secretary, is with us. Dr. Amanullah Khan, Professor of Economics. We have Gautam Chikkarmani, Vice President of ORF, and Joyita Bhattacharya, Senior Fellow at ORF. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you very much for being with us. First things first, we're going to rate the budget. The briefcase is gone. The Bahi Khata is in. Ashok Jha, what do you make of Nirmala Sitharaman's maiden budget?
Well, it's. I must confess that I couldn't hear the whole budget because there were some disturbances on the TV channel. But whatever I heard, and I probably heard about 70-75%, I think it seems to be a pretty balanced kind of exercise. She has tried to basically ensure that nobody is too badly off after the budget. There are concessions given to various sectors. In fact, there's simplification of taxation in terms of trying to reduce the number of hassles that the taxpayers have, both the direct taxes as well as indirect taxes. So all in all, I think it's a fairly balanced kind of budget.
You're the second person who said Gautam Chikkarmani is balanced euphemism for tepid. Why is everyone calling it just a balanced budget and nothing more?
I think there was a lot of talk about things other than growth in terms of convenience and at the end that the customs duty on petrol, which is going to increase the petrol prices. But what I was looking for was growth. And I think there are some indicators there. For instance, 70,000 crore of capitalization to public sector banks, consolidation. There is going to be governance reforms in public sector banks. These are good growth-inducing things. NBFCs are going to be giving some 6 monthly concession to NBFCs. Again, another area for concern. Once these drivers are looked at, then I think lending should increase. I'm looking for once lending increases, they have some clear views on infrastructure, for instance. And if this money from the recapitalization of banks, etc., goes into infrastructure, we can look at growth.
Earlier in the day, you were saying that the budget is all about the concerns of an economy. Now, do you feel that the concern of the economy in the present global context of China, America, does it address those core concerns? Unemployment, fiscal deficit,
Fiscal deficit, I didn't hear of it at all. So we need to look at the numbers once the finance bill is out. But the core concern, no, I don't think there has been any great landmark thing other than financing of banks and NBFCs and the talk about disinvestment. I think the best news we have heard so far is disinvestment of Air India, which is going to be highly politicized. And I think that was the only time when the House we could hear murmurs in the House in an otherwise extremely quiet and civilized budget speech. In the sense, civilized means there was no hangama, no screaming, shouting, which usually accompanies such budgets.
Right. You guys are economists and domain experts, but I'm looking at it from a layperson's perspective. And the thing that people are talking about is that budgets used to be a statement of how much expenditure, how much allocation, but these documents are vision documents in a sense. They're looking at bigger ideas, newer ideas, and game-changing plans. Do you see a reflection of that?
What will be less talked about is what is most interesting about this budget. For example, I saw this announcement on the National Research Foundation. An announcement that is interesting. It brings all research grants together. There is an announcement on monies for big institutions, for emerging institutions. Small announcement, 400 crores, but it is there. There is something on the National Sports Education Agency. So these are the new interesting ones. Otherwise, if you see the budget, I was looking for allocations into healthcare, education, sanitation. We don't know. It looks like a disappointment there. A big prelude, a big preface to how women are important, how they have voted, etc., and nothing to women except 5,000 rupees to one lady in one SHG. It's really a pittance. That's why, a very vague kind of speech, but small green shoots in a few areas. So if you ask for that ranking, 5 on 10 is the best that one can do.
5 on 10. What is your rating?
First, I should congratulate India when it comes to empowerment of the women, because this is the first time in the history of India that a women finance minister is presenting the budget. So that way, I think a very positive beginning. But if you really want to tell me how the budget is emerging, I think it's a very conscious and very balanced budget. I was expecting more when it comes to job creation issues and all, but didn't. And I totally agree that there should be more discussion about how should we go ahead, the roadmaps and all. Instead of, but probably those things are in the document. We have to go through the proper budget document and we have to decipher what's ahead. Overall, it's a very balanced budget. It's very balanced for everybody. They wanted to make happy for probably everyone.
Yes, they have 5 more years to go and they have a brute majority, so they can sort of push tough reforms if they want to. Ashok Jha, what do you think were the focus areas? A lot has been said about agriculture, the infra push, electronic vehicles, electric vehicles is what some others are talking about. What did you think this budget predominantly focused on?
See, the way I would look at this budget is from the standpoint of what were the problems facing the economy today. Now, the main problem facing the economy was that the growth rates had declined, that there was, exports had declined, there was a problem with employment, there was a problem with investment. Now, as far as this budget is concerned, it has looked at a few of these issues quite well, I thought. For instance, now both land, labor, and capital markets were stressed in the previous thing, because you had the Land Acquisition Act had swung the other way. You had labor markets which were very, very inflexible, and capital, of course, the banks didn't have money to lend, even if there was a demand for capital. So at least as far as recapitalization of banks is concerned, they have provided some money, some 70,000 crores for that. So to that extent, the capital market will be taken care of to that extent. Labor, there was a reference to the fact that they will try to streamline labor laws into 4 codes. So that also, I'm not quite sure what the details of those codes would be, but at least there is an attempt to take on that problem. And as far as land is concerned, There is, of course, no mention about anything to do with land acquisition, how they're planning to streamline it. The only thing that one can look at from that angle is that perhaps they are going to leave it to the state governments to look at.
But have they really taken care of the agriculture? Because if you look at the sector, 50% of the workforce, is in agriculture. It contributes 14% to the GDP. Yeah. And though the minister really stressed upon this issue when she used the word Gaon Garib or Kisan, which is the center of our attraction. Soul of India lives in villages. So you think, has she taken those structural issues seriously in the budget, or these are in incremental way she has handled the problems which our agriculture sector faces today?
No, see, she's talked about creating business incubators in agriculture. In 75,000 entrepreneurs in the agricultural sectors will basically be incubated. She's talked about dairying as improvement in the rural economy. She's talked about farmer-producer organizations which will be set up. So these are, of course, they're not directly going to impact the incomes of farmers in farming, but they will probably improve the incomes of the people in the agricultural sector.
On agriculture, I just wanted to add that there was a lot of agriculture during the election campaign. And I was just looking at how much of it gets reflected in the budget. For example,
you're comparing it with the interim budget.
The election campaign. In the election campaign, some very interesting promises and very big ones. A collateral-free credit for 50 lakhs, an interest-free short-term crop loan, land titling law. These were three big announcements that the Prime Minister himself made several times. And none of these three were reflected in the budget. So I was just wondering, is it there in the allocations? If it was there in the speech, it would have highlighted the fact that there was something that was being followed up from the Prime Minister's speeches. Aqua food produce, while dairy was talked about, there is nothing about aqua food produce that again the Prime Minister stressed on during the election speeches. My big issue there is that the only thing that figures in the budget seems to be that zero-based farming.
Zero budget farming.
That zero budget farming. Now, is that the only measure that the government is going to take? And do we know anything about whether it is useful, whether it helps? Do we have any data on how it has worked in the one state of Andhra Pradesh? We don't know, and if that is going to get rolled out without that background information, I am a little worried.
Right. I guess the fine print will contain something. Gautam Chakrabarty, the blue sky thinking that the economic survey talked about, do you see a reflection of that in the budget when it talks about the economic survey said that it's been guided by blue sky thinking?
Vision that the survey
talks about. Do you see a reflection of that in the budget? Bold reform push.
Other than public sector disinvestment that she's talked about, which is not really a reform now, it was a reform in the 90s. Now it is more of work in progress. I think the big thing, like I mentioned, is Air India. If they can get away by selling Air India, at least the losses of exchequers would reduce. They may or may not get much money out of there, but the losses of the exchequer every year would get reduced. Mr. Jha talked about the labor reforms. She's putting it into 4. This is already another, which was there, I think, in last year, September, they had come out with this. The Labor Ministry had come out, they'll break it into 4, which is wages, safety, inter-disputes, industry and labor dispute, and possibly the 4th one was trade unions. Right now there are 37 laws. So all of that will get clubbed into 4. I think even 4 is too much. 2 is enough. But it's not Nirmala Sitharaman's signature. This is a continuation of what was there. I think what she has done is tried to bring efficiency. She has not jumped in terms of major reforms or major announcements. She's trying to create more efficiencies through simplification of tax administration, making the taxpayers feel good, thank you very much, etc. Angel tax issue, which was there for startups, is there, and the recapitalization of banks.
That's why the Prime Minister worked as a Gujarat Chief Minister also, simplification of the existing infrastructure rather than bringing dramatic changes in administration.
And she's spoken about scaling up repeatedly. She's saying the focus now is going to be on scaling up the projects that the schemes that we bring in.
So I don't know what that means and how it will happen. But for instance, the only specific thing which I found was this, she has ambitions of turning India into a global hub of manufacturing of e-vehicles.
Yes.
Some people say this is never going to happen. I don't think so. I think manufacturing of an e-vehicle, the processes are very different from manufacturing of a normal vehicle.
Right.
And it is far more simpler. If this goes through, I think there could be some future out there.
In short, because before we go to our guest who is waiting for us, she indeed mentioned a significant portion on recapitalization of public sector banks and consolidation of public sector units. How significant is that step?
It's a very big step. This money, the liquidity is a problem. Liquidity in the system has been a problem over the last few months. It has been a reason for the slowdown. Now, in fact, the problem is that there could be money in banks, and after the 70,000 it will increase, but will banks lend? That remains a problem, which brings me to the earlier discussion we had on trust deficit.
Right. Rajiv Talwar, CEO and Director of DLF Limited, is with us from Delhi. Good afternoon, Mr. Talwar. Your take and your first reaction to this budget presented by Nirmala Sitharaman.
I think a lot of vision to get the economy clicking up to $5 trillion, and definitely some new things over there, definitely, for whether it is electric vehicles or whether it is MROs or coming in, whether it is the virtuous cycle for domestic and international investment, a lot of financial markets being liberated. I think that's a very good sign. Heavy emphasis on infrastructure, again, excellent. On rural ease of living, very good again. On the education front, yes, major advances being made. But on the taxation, I think they need to go a little more deeper into taxation. I think that's something which India should not lend itself to, very high taxation, even on the rich. I think that was what plagued us even about 50 years ago. So on that, lots of rationalization. The good part is that yes, 25% corporate tax on companies having a turnover of up to 400 crores. Very good on that. So in all, yes, a budget which is full of vision, and given the time of 5 years, should take India definitely to a $5 trillion economy.
Two interesting points that I noted, Rajiv Talwar, that I want your reactions to. One is to commercially harness India's space prowess, and the second is the creation of a social stock exchange for social enterprises and voluntary organizations to raise capital. How do you see these two steps?
Very good, very good. In fact, yes, India's space prowess now being commercialized, excellent idea. And similarly, for social enterprises and voluntary organizations to come into public space, again, a very new idea and should augur very well for the markets again. So in all, yes, should be going towards a 3 trillion to a 5 trillion economy within a short span of time, should mean great changes. And I think eventually one should hope for that, yes, there should be a rationalization for taxation, whether it is excise duty on petrol and diesel or whether it is on large income earners. There should be thing, because that is what the international model is and will be. So hopefully we should not be precursors to setting up an international model, but otherwise a great vision. If we can go up to a $5 trillion economy, which we will, that would mean very large gains for all the people of India. So in all, a very good vision statement, totally.
So she has simplified the tax rates. Now, earlier it used to be 25% for the companies with 250 crore turnover. Now it says that it will cover companies with a turnover of 400 crores. So is the industry satisfied with this, or should the rest of them, which is 0.7%, being covered in it?
No, I think it's a very, if 99.3% are being covered, I don't think we should ask for anything more. It's a very good step. Then, of course, scrutiny being made totally electronic, all returns being filed. I think the number of taxpayers, and with the amount of interlinking of big data which is going to be done on expenditure, I think it augurs very well for tax revenues. And just as it was stated at the time of GST announcement that as our collections go up, the slabs will reduce, the number of items in the top slabs will reduce. I'm sure in the years to come, even on direct taxation, there will be changes which will be beneficial for the individual earners and individuals living in India. A very, very good beginning.
And so what do you make of Nirmala Sitharaman's statement when she spoke about strategic disinvestment? She also spoke about participation of the private sector in it.
Yeah. No, she's opening up. She set up a large disinvestment target, which is very good. Again, a good measure that yes, we should achieve those disinvestment targets. There's recapitalization of banks, which is very positive. And for the private sector to come in and take up shareholding up to a sectoral limit, and foreign investment too being allowed to come into that limit, I think we are hoping now to monetize the economy which was earlier in government control. So to that extent, maximum governance and minimum interference. To that, they are building it up very well.
Right. Rajiv Talwar, thanks very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this budget with us. I'm going to take point by point the proposals that are made so that we can cover more ground. Joyita, let me begin with you. There was a fair bit of mention about NRIs. She spoke about the fact that India has high remittances, but we want investments from NRIs, and the government is trying to make it easier for them, saying that they will get Aadhaar without that waiting period. What do you make of those provisions, of those proposals?
I think it's a very good way to get investment from the NRI, because for a long time we have been focusing on trying to develop diaspora and I think it is time to get into and bring them into our fold and enjoy the economy. So we have to take their advantages, and I think they should also take advantage of this and they should move forward. This is a very positive and forward-looking move by the government.
Ashok Jha, making the PAN card and the Aadhaar card interchangeable and saying you can use your Aadhaar number to pay your taxes.
I don't think it's a very major reform measure really, because it's only those that do not have PAN cards but who have Aadhaar cards. It will only benefit those people.
Is there political messaging in it then?
There is a messaging which is that Aadhaar cards are gaining importance. That is the messaging, and that therefore you need not rush and get a PAN card. If you have Aadhaar card, it's good enough.
One nation, one card. One nation, one grid.
It's not a new idea. Again, it's a work in progress. Definitely, the progress should be there. But it's not any great budgetary signature. Can I just talk about regulation for a minute? A very good job, and which has gone unnoticed so far. For instance, by bringing NBFCs, she says parts of their activities are not regulated, by putting it squarely under RBI, so that's good. The National Housing Bank, there was a conflict of interest being a participant as well as a regulator. That part has been taken away and handed over to RBI. I think this is very efficient. This should have happened earlier. The third is the NPS, National Pension System Trust, which was again being governed by PFRDA, even though it is a participant. That has also been taken away from PFRDA. So I think there are a series of such small, tiny steps which will bring efficiency into the overall system. I think that's where a lot of fine print, we need to read the budget carefully now. Right. But a lot of what she has done lies in the fine print of this budget, and these three in regulation alone are all good steps.
Also, what is being talked about on social media as well, 1 crore rupees in 59 minutes in loans for MSMEs.
Yeah, for MSMEs, That's one thing. I think just to address that one big elephant that wasn't addressed, which was jobs. Therefore, something had to be announced on MSMEs. Now, it makes for a good headline, 59 minutes. It will be very difficult to see that through. Getting a loan is close to, impossible. But, the big announcements that again we are missing, and I think those are really forward-looking, are the hints that we will have FDI opening up in aviation, media.
Yes.
That's a big one. I mean, and in single brand retail. I don't know why that is not being highlighted everywhere. Those are the three major sectors which the NRIs are interested in, which big venture capitalists are interested in, and if that is going to get opened up, it is absolutely revolutionary.
Also, she spoke about strategic sale of Air India and setting a target of, 1.05 lakh crores for PSU disinvestment.
Yeah, because currently the target was 90,000 crores. So you've stepped up the target. But Air India will be a real clincher because they've tried to disinvest Air India a couple of times without success. So if they are able to manage to do it, it means that the disinvestment drive really will have picked up. But now coming back to one of the issues that you raised earlier about whether we can become a hub for electric vehicles, I think the biggest problem here is the battery, because the battery of electric vehicles account for about 40% of the cost of the electric vehicles. Now, I don't see any movement in making India a manufacturing hub for the batteries for electric vehicles. There are a lot of stuff that is required for that, the minerals that are required. We don't have them. So I don't know how we are going to basically become an international hub for electric vehicles unless we are able to manufacture batteries here locally, and B, of course, that is a matter of implementation, set up charging stations all over the country.
Plus the issue of disposability and the impact on environment, that has not been actually carried out properly as to what do you do with the batteries once they are done. I think, we have a guest, but before we go to our guest, every finance minister has had a policy on gold. Arun Jaitley for 2 years continuously tried to unlock that wealth. This time also, Nirmala Sitharaman mentioned gold. Why do we successively fail to unlock that wealth? Billions of dollars sitting in bank accounts.
No, essentially now, in my view, this increasing the customs duty on gold from 10% to 12.5% is retrograde. It is going to bring back smuggling of gold into the country. See, the smuggling of gold into the country had virtually come to a halt once the duties on gold were reduced to about 2%. That was more than a decade ago. After which it continued to be less than 2% for many years, then slowly they kept on increasing it, and now 12.5% duty means that the smuggler will have a greater incentive to smuggle.
Right. With us from Gurgaon is Preeti Khurana. She's Chief Editor of Clear Tax. Good afternoon, Preeti. Thank you for joining us here on WION. What is it that stood out for you in this budget?
Hi, thank you for having me. I think in the sense of the budget, of course, a couple of things were missing. We were really hoping that there are going to be tax benefits for individual taxpayers, something on the lines of increasing the exemption limit or providing higher ATC, but none of that came through, especially, at the backdrop of what they said that they had improved collections. They said collections rose by 78%. And in spite of that, they actually chose the surcharge route to boost tax revenues. But we felt that there has to be a more consolidated approach to how you want to increase your tax revenues. So that was a miss. Of course, hoping for more tax deductions. That did not come through. The specific deduction for interest paid on a loan used to purchase electric vehicles, for now, that seems pretty symbolic. Like some of the other guests were saying, that the remaining ecosystem is still not present. So we're not sure how much of a benefit that really is, because, it will take some more time for taxpayers to actually start warming up to the idea of owning an electric vehicle, because the infrastructure, the ecosystem does not exist today. Other than that, yes, of course, there is a fine print, especially on the higher interest deduction for affordable housing. Now, that has been added not through Section 24, which currently allows rupees 2 lakhs deduction. It has been added through a new section, which is 80EEA, which is slightly different from 80EE, which existed in the past. So there's a new section, and it actually excludes certain localities and certain areas in certain cities where you cannot buy a house for that value and claim the deduction. So, of course, there's a fine print, and we are going through that.
Indeed. Any surprises for you in this budget?
Yeah, like I said, we were hoping that there were going to be more tax benefits, especially on savings, household savings, none of that came through. Even the economic survey focused a lot on how the government can actually boost growth by increasing savings, but the direct tax proposals, had absolutely limited, information for individual taxpayers. But what stood out in a
मध्यम वर्ग को प्रगति मिलेगी, विकास की रफ्तार को गति मिलेगी। इस बजट से टैक्स व्यवस्था का सरलीकरण होगा, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का आधुनिकीकरण होगा। ये बजट उद्यम और उद्यमियों को मजबूत बनाएगा, देश के विकास में महिलाओं की भागीदारी को और बढ़ाएगा। ये बजट शिक्षा को बेहतर बनाएगा, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस और स्पेस रिसर्च के लाभ को लोगों के बीच पहुंचाएगा। इस बजट में आर्थिक जगत के रिफॉर्म भी हैं, आम नागरिक के लिए ईज ऑफ लिविंग भी है और साथ ही गांव और गरीब का कल्याण भी है। ये बजट एक ग्रीन बजट है जिसमें पर्यावरण, इलेक्ट्रिक मोबिलिटी, सोलर सेक्टर पर विशेष बल दिया गया है। पिछले 5 साल में देश निराशा के वातावरण को पीछे छोड़ चुका है, उस वातावरण से बाहर निकल गया है और देश उम्मीदों से भरा हुआ है, आत्मविश्वास से भरा हुआ है। बिजली, गैस, सड़क, गंदगी, भ्रष्टाचार, वीआईपी कल्चर, अनेक अनेक कठिनाइयां सामान्य मानवी को अपने हक के लिए जद्दोजहद की जिंदगी, यानी एक प्रकार से खुद से ही उसको जूझना पड़ता था, उसको कम करने के लिए हमने लगातार प्रयास किए हैं, सफलता भी मिली है। आज लोगों के जीवन में नई आकांक्षाएं और खूब सारी अपेक्षाएं हैं। ये बजट देश को विश्वास दे रहा है कि इन्हें पूरा किया जा सकता है। ये विश्वास दे रहा है कि दिशा सही है, प्रोसेस ठीक है, गति सही है और इसलिए लक्ष्य पर पहुंचना भी निश्चित है। ये बजट आशा, विश्वास और आकांक्षा का बजट है। ये बजट 21वीं सदी के भारत की अपेक्षाओं को पूरा करने और न्यू इंडिया के निर्माण में एक अहम कड़ी साबित होगा। ये बजट वर्ष 2022 यानी आजादी के 75 वर्ष से जुड़े संकल्पों को पूरा करने में देश का मार्ग निर्धारण करेगा। पिछले 5 वर्ष हमारी सरकार ने गरीब, किसान, दलित, पीड़ित, शोषित, वंचित को सशक्त करने में, एम्पावर करने के लिए अनेकविध कदम उठाए। अब अगले 5 वर्षों में यही एम्पावरमेंट उन्हें देश के विकास का पावर हाउस बनाएगा। $5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी यानी कि $5 लाख करोड़ की अर्थव्यवस्था के सपनों को पूरा करने की ऊर्जा देश को इसी पावर हाउस से मिलेगी। बजट में कृषि क्षेत्र में स्ट्रक्चरल रिफॉर्म के लिए नई योजनाओं का ऐलान किया गया है। पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि के माध्यम से किसानों को सीधे लगभग 87,000 करोड़ 87,000 करोड़ रुपए का ट्रांसफर हो या 10,000 से ज्यादा फार्मर प्रोड्यूसर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एफपीओ का संकल्प, मछुआरों के लिए प्रधानमंत्री मत्स्य संपदा योजना हो या नेशनल वेयर हाउसिंग ग्रिड की स्थापना, ये योजनाएं वर्ष 2022 तक किसानों की आय 2 गुनी करने में प्रभावी भूमिका निभाएगी। ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था में निवेश बढ़ाने से गांव में ही रोजगार के नए अवसर भी बढ़ेंगे। जनशक्ति के बिना जल संचय संभव नहीं है। जल संचय जन आंदोलन की भावना से ही हो सकता है। इस बजट में वर्तमान ही नहीं, भावी पीढ़ी की चिंता साफ साफ नजर आती है। स्वच्छ भारत मिशन की तरह हर घर जल का अभियान देश को जल संकट से निपटने के लिए पूरी तरह सक्षम बनाएगा। बजट में लिए गए फैसले अगले दशक की नींव मजबूत करने के साथ ही नौजवानों के लिए नई संभावनाओं के द्वार खोलेंगे। ये बजट आपकी अपेक्षाओं का, आपके सपनों का, आपके संकल्पों का भारत बनाने की दिशा में एक ऐतिहासिक कदम है। मैं कल काशी में इस विषय पर विस्तार से बातचीत करने वाला हूं, लेकिन आज मैं फिलहाल फिर एक बार वित्त मंत्री और उनकी पूरी टीम को बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं और भारत के सभी नागरिकों को उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए अनेक अनेक शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
I think a lot of important points made by the Prime Minister, but before we go into his speech, my question is that Nirmala Sitharaman also spoke about study in India. In 2014-15, Prime Minister spoke about Make in India, Made in India. 2019, it's study in India. Is it viable, keeping in mind the sort of infrastructure we have created in the past 50 years, sort of teachers we have produced, and the sort of public spending on education we have seen in the last 30 years in universities, colleges?